afternoon. The blaze started outside the pediatric ward. 83 patients were evacuated and transported to the Botshabelo hospital around Bloemfontein. MEC Mahlatsi says labor officials are expected to do inspections before the hospital can be opened to the public again.
The people who are coming, we want to take this opportunity to make a call that our people who need emergency services, they should rather go to Pelonomi and Universitas Hospital until further notice. We allow the forensics to do their work, and after that, I've just communicated with the Department of Labor that they should come and check the place, and they'll tell us when the place is safe to be occupied. It's only then that we can come back and use the parts that have not been affected by the fire.
In other news, Action SA says it will nominate Athol Trollip as chairperson for Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts. The party has its sights set on Scopa chair in the National Assembly and 3 other provinces. John Moody will be nominated in Gauteng, Thoko Mashiane in Mpumalanga, and Khosi Kwena Mangupe in the Northwest. The chairperson of Scopa is generally reserved for the opposition parties. In the National Assembly, the position has previously been filled by the IFP and the African People's Convention. Parliament will elect chairpersons of portfolio committees tomorrow. Lastly, the West African bloc ECOWAS has warned that it risks disintegration and worsened insecurity after Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger formalized their breakaway union. The head of the ECOWAS Commission, President Omar Aliou Touré, says the move is a major blow to the 50-year-old bloc and could have serious consequences if they do not reserve their decision. This comes after the military leaders of the 3 countries said on Saturday that they were turning their backs on the 15-member ECOWAS to form a confederation of their own state. The bloc has appointed Senegalese president to mediate the crisis. Recapping the top story this hour, Gauteng residents are warned to brace themselves for an extremely cold night as temperatures are expected to plummet overnight to -4 degrees in Johannesburg and -2 in Tshwane. Headlines at 3:30 for SAFM News. I'm Dino Motau.
And coming up in news sports this hour, Chiefs launched Toyota Cup and Springbok Sevens A finished second in Mauritius. More details at 3:30.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I tell you what, we have a show, as we expect every single day, a show that best reflects the national pulse and very often the global pulse or the international pulse. We'll chat to Jeremy Corbyn. He's the former Labour Party leader, independent candidate now in that UK Parliament. He's there. We chat to him pretty shortly, so listen out for that. Of course, there's been issues on South Africa's energy distribution and what all that means. We'll talk about that and the funding for a nuclear plant. There's an issue about video trends that you probably need to be listening to. And then there was a French election, maybe a French revolution that took place over the last few days. We must keep an eye on that, as well as the pulse of the Public Service Report. And then, as you know, there's been the Cape of Storms and the Highveld chills, all of that coming up. And I'll tell you what, everything else in between all of that we'll cover here from 3 to 6 on the National Pulse. So welcome to the show. It's great that you're a part of it. Always love the fact that you're listening, you're engaged, you're connected, and let's do that in many ways. You can call in, as always, on the biggest issues, the big movers, the big drivers of the day. 086 000 2032. You can WhatsApp in text or voice note form, and that is 0614 104 107. And as always, you know that on social media, which you can do right throughout the show. We'll pick it up. SFM Radio on the X platform, as well as on Facebook too. And you can tag, and you can certainly tag me too. Do use that hashtag, the National Pulse. So my name's Ashraf Garda. Let's get talking. Let's get talking indeed. Let's start with the That's My Point feature, right? So, what is the purpose of a national anthem? I asked that question after watching that particularly powerful rendition of the national anthem when the Springboks beat the Irish at Loftus on Saturday. Remember, and you know. I mean, we can think about this. National anthems are a rallying call. They're a galvanizer. They're a reminder, really, to all people in the world for a call to country duty. They are a call to attention. They effectively also remind us of our service to the nation, right? And that applies to, obviously to sports, to big events, to inaugurations of a president, and sometimes at state, often at state funerals as well. Some anthems are pretty average. Some of them really have this nature of being just powerful by the lyrics or the music or the sounds that really emanate from that. So what about South Africa? Well, we know that, our anthem is a combination of multiple languages. I think 5 languages, in fact, makes up our anthem. And here it is, right? And this really is the gist of it. It is so powerful when it's done powerfully. But you may have been aware of what happened on Saturday, in particular with KB Motsilanyane, and I mean, she was just brilliant. So that alone just trended around the country even before the game started because of how powerful it was. And that she then not just sung the national anthem, but she, towards the latter part, when the English verses came up, I think she just picked up on the mood of the nation, or the audience in the stadium at the time, by effectively pausing and getting the audience to finish that anthem. And of course they said, and sounds the call to come together, and united we shall stand. Let us live and strive for freedom in South Africa, our land. Now, it got me thinking rather wickedly that in that case, that anthem in effect is an anthem for national unity, or it should be, isn't it? And that's the question. That is really what an anthem should be. An anthem that is an amplifier of a nation in union. I'm Ashraf Garda, and that's my point. What's yours?
The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference will take place from 10 to 12 July 2024 in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. Tune in to the Full Circle with Bridget Masinga and the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda to get insights from the conference. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, so here we are. Question, by the way, here's a thought for you, right? As we move into the show for the entire for the day, any of the big issues that we touch on, any questions you'd like us to ask in advance, and you can WhatsApp us, but possibly the best way as well, even on social media. I can't always promise that we'll pick out those questions. It's incredibly tight, but where we can, we will do so. So, for example, Jeremy Corbyn, we chat to him pretty shortly. Any questions for him? And then my point regarding the role of a national anthem. Let's see if you have any thoughts on that. You can also call in on that. There's a couple of voice notes that we'll pick up right away.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ashraf. It's Fred Trucker here in KZN heading to Gauteng. Mr. Ashraf, I was so moved by the Minister of Sports. The energy that he had there by the rugby match. And, the atmosphere there, the people, that win, Mr. Ashraf, it just brought the whole new game to, just to feel South African. That was good, man.
I completely agree with you. But here's the thing with Gayton McKenzie, right? Now, I've interviewed him once a long time ago, about his book, I think, about his life in prison. That's a long, long time ago, right? You have to say this, whatever your thoughts are about what he has said about many other issues that I would disagree with, just to get it out there. He's certainly taken his job and his role as the Minister of Sports, Art and Culture seriously, as you have said, truck driver, with the type of energy that you'd expect all cabinet ministers to take, like complete zest and gusto. He's like a winger in a rugby team. He's like the number 11 or number 14 or maybe the fullback at 15. That's the type of thing. And you want to see that. I mean, I see he's running and he's like, no, I need to be fit, and he's running. So my question to you just about that part is, what do you pick out from all those things? I mean, just the thoughts of how the energy of one person then resonates with you and therefore has the ability to resonate with an entire nation, because very quickly you get switched on to that department or that ministry and we want to see what they're doing, right? And the same applies, that applies to, all, 30 ministers? You suddenly get 30 switched on ministries. That's what I want, isn't it? Right. Do you have a thought on that? I mean, what about other ministers? I know it's incredibly early days, but are there other ministers that you've observed, especially the new ones, not the old ones, because, I mean, you've seen the old ones, especially the new ones, right, that you've observed, that you've seen, that you like, hey, you know what? I like what this person's saying. I like how they do it. I like how they're wanting to tackle certain issues. Are there ministers? Give me names if that's the case. Now, to call in 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. And then to WhatsApp, as always, you can text or voice note us 0614 104 107. 0614 104 107. Right, there's a couple of more that I may want to just play. Let me just see. By the way, somebody asked a question about whether we're going to Cape Town. Yeah, we certainly are, for that big Standard Bank event about business in Africa or investment in Africa. Looking forward to that. We'll be there on Thursday, and I think that's really important. Okay, we're going to chat to Jeremy Corbyn, and he comes up shortly.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Okay, here's another quick comment about the anthem. Ashraf, the anthem is well and good if you're winning the match, but not if you lose the match. Errol, I hear you, Errol, but I think that's really not the point. The point is its ability to galvanize. That's really what it is. Its ability. And I'm not saying you must sing the national anthem every day, but I mean, there could also be like a colloquial version of the national anthem, just like a switch on. If I just say something, you know exactly what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. And that could apply to all of us. Like, for example, we, the National Pulse, when we say, what moves the National Pulse, it's a call to action to you and I too. Here's another on the national anthem.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Makware Rachinazo from Pendo. Ashraf, KB was so energetic and so inspiring. She's a patriotic South African. The way she sang that national anthem, yo. Yes, I was over the moon. I was so very happy and proud. Look at how she finished it. The whole of stadium was begging her, singing. We need patriotic South Africans like her, to sing our national anthem. What is interesting about our national anthem is that it has more than 2 official languages. That should be working as a symbol of all South Africans to get united. It is very, very painful that we have many South Africans who do not even know how to sing our national anthems. Sometimes when they sing, they can only sing in one language. When it comes to the other languages, they keep quiet. Thank you very much.
And that's another whole issue. And I think that in many ways is a reflection of something I brought up early on. It's not about whether you're singing or you're boycotting certain parts of an anthem. I think what it is the lack of investment. And I'm also guilty of this, for all of us, to be able to fully try and string together more than a couple of lines of other languages that make up the country. And I think it is an issue that somehow needs to be sorted out, not so much of the anthem, but in our daily lives. Okay, well, what about the daily lives of Jeremy Corbyn? Once a Labour Party leader, then effectively expelled, then called back, then he's an independent. And you know what happens to independents in South Africa? They hardly ever get elected. I can't think of a single independent in this election that's got themselves elected onto the National Assembly. But that's not the case in the UK. There we have people. Jeremy Corbyn is one of them. So now he's an MP, former leader of the Labour Party, but certainly an MP is where he is. So, Jeremy, appreciate your time, and you're certainly connected to the National Pulse.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you
for
indeed.
Inviting me onto your program.
Much appreciated. Well, it's always good to talk to you and to connect with you on a level, multi-level issues, right? So, first things first, Jeremy Corbyn, independent MP versus Jeremy Corbyn, Labour MP, historically. How are you coping with the difference in practical terms now?
Well, we announced less than 6 weeks ago that I was going to run as an independent after the Labour Party flatly refused to even allow my name to be considered by local party members to nominate me. And we set up a campaign from nothing and got hundreds of volunteers, local people and others to come in and help. We ran a very intensive campaign of hope and of economic inclusion, of anti-racism and of anti-war. And we won with just a few points shy of 50% of the vote, 49.4%, I think is what we got. And so it was an incredible result against a Labour Party machine. Most former Labour voters stuck with me as the MP they'd voted for in the past. And so this was the 11th time I've been elected for exactly the same area. Yes, it's different. It was a different campaign. In some ways, it was a more political campaign because at every house we went to, every doorstep, our supporters had to explain to the people why I was running as an independent, what the issues were, and if they would support us. And as you can see, the result has shown that to be the case. Overall, Labour's vote in the election, despite winning a very large parliamentary majority, was actually lower than the total Labour vote achieved in the 2019 and 2017 elections. And so I think there's some cause for thought there. If I may say so, the other thought I have from the election is the 4 million votes cast for Reform, which is a very right-wing party led by Farage, I think are a real problem and a real threat. And so the fight against racism is serious. And I must say, probably like yourselves, relieved at the results of the National Assembly elections in France last night, in which the far right did not get the majority they expected.
So, we've had three countries I can talk about. And it's a bit of a segue into those three. South Africa, we still have the African National Congress, the party of Mandela, as the dominant party, but they're not the majority party any longer. Then we've had a change. The Conservatives, as you know, kicked out in the UK after 14 years in leadership. And then this is dramatic. Well, I called it this, not so much a French election over the weekend, but a French revolution, because that's what seems to have taken place. So how do you connect the dots of the three? Do you see, are there trends that you'd like to share?
I think you connect the dots in the sense of working class living standards falling very badly in Britain by around 20% in 10 years. The attempts at bringing in austerity economics in France, which has led to an awful lot of political problems for Macron, and the high levels of poverty in France are a factor in it. And also the economic problems in South Africa and the poverty of so many people and the failure of government in South Africa to deliver all that's needed, particularly in housing, water and electricity, as I understand it. And so I think the connections are there. Now, when communities are economically under stress, they can go in two directions. Either you can go in the direction of hope, which is where you go in a more socialist, if you like, direction of provision of universal services and support for everybody, or politically you can go in the direction, which is what's happened in France and to quite a big extent in Britain, where the right simply blame all the problems on vulnerable minorities. And the way the refugees are blamed in Britain for things is economically illiterate and complete nonsense, but does have a powerful resonance. So it is the significance of particularly the French election, where in the first round it looked like the far right, led by Le Pen, were going to do very well and possibly even get an overall majority in the National Assembly. Didn't do that in the second round when the left parties rallied together. So I think there's something very significant there. I suspect, and I'm in touch with colleagues in France, Mélenchon and others, I suspect the big issues in the National Assembly are going to be issues of social service and health provision, and also economic chances for young people. Youth unemployment is a very serious problem. Likewise, unemployment in South Africa, you know better than me, is an enormous problem. And in the past, you could say if somebody got to go to university and became a graduate, it was a passport to a job. It no longer is. And so the unemployment levels now transcend all kinds of economic and education classes.
Well, one of the things you've said, and I'm quoting you, the political system must produce answers, I think, for social problems, you said, right? Does that suggest that in many parts of the world, and I can include the USA in this, and many others that we've just ignored for the moment, right, that by and large, that the political systems that we are a part of, and largely democratic systems, they're actually not producing the answers for the social issues or social challenges. They're not solving social problems.
Exactly so. I made those remarks in the speech I made in accepting the election results. And the point I was making there was that our media obsessed in the election campaign about what were actually not that huge differences between the parties. And if they'd bothered to analyse the economic offer made by both the Conservative government outgoing and the Labour government coming in, the economic strategies are not that different. Labour say they will be able to fund improvements by economic growth, which is very laudable, but is unlikely to achieve very much. Economic growth is less than 1%. Much less than 1% at the moment in Britain, might get up to 2% in a couple of 3 years' time. Whereas we have a huge issue of inner city poverty, child poverty, and low wages. And so I don't think the political systems are actually addressing economic inequality because they're not prepared to challenge the power of very big business, which directs us into a sort of market economy idea as being a meritocratic society in which somehow or other the trickle-down effect of economic growth will benefit people.
So then the big question is we tend to change political parties every 4 to 5 years, but should the bigger global debate be changing political systems? And if so, to what?
Well, I think the global debate has to be that in South Africa, you have huge social problems. You have social problems all across Europe, and you have also growing poverty as well as growing wealth in some parts of the world. Do the political systems that we have actually meet the needs of people or not? Well, in many cases, they clearly do not, because a political system ought to be able to deliver for the entirety of the population. It clearly does not. Now, that means either you go for issues of political change, electoral reform, in the case of Britain, is under some degree of consideration. But you look really about the power of very big businesses and corporations. Look at the power of global mining corporations to effectively set the price that is paid for minerals. Look at the power of global oil companies. Look at the power of very big organizations like Facebook, which are now some of the biggest companies. They are not actually answerable to any democratic accountability and are very quick to even threaten national governments with state-based legislative attacks on them in order to protect themselves, their interests, and their profits. So I do think there needs to be a bigger understanding of the inadequacy of democratically elected governments in dealing with global economic powers.
And we've had this conversation even in South Africa, and I'm sure it touches on to what you're saying is, can we say that big business, global businesses, not only influence the shapes of political parties and policy within parties, but de facto run political parties?
Well, they all try to influence political parties and their policies and how they develop them. That's very clear. I mean, you just look at the attempts at lobbying all parties, and I'm sure they do exactly the same with all the parties in South Africa, as they do here, as they do in every other country. But it then becomes a bit harsher when they start saying, well, if you try to raise corporate taxation beyond, say, in the case of Europe, around 20-21% to considerably more than that, then they will simply not invest in those countries. And so they actually do play what I would call ducks and drakes between nations and economies. And so they move their head offices around in the case of supply companies, or in the case of manufacturing companies, they demand assurances on levels of taxation in order to invest there. And if they're demanding low levels of taxation in any African country, as they do, then actually what they're doing is demanding less expenditure on public services and public needs. By and large, that the biggest expenditure by any government outside of defence is usually health and education.
What do you make then of the shifts in the UK and France? I'm looking at the comparison. There's a sense that in the UK, the Labour Party won because they shifted away from the type of policies that Jeremy Corbyn has and moved more towards the centre, more palatable, whereas what's happened now in France is it's a more leftist move, which was just unthinkable a week ago. So what do you help us understand that?
I think you're reading the wrong papers.
Tell us that.
No, it's all right. That's light-hearted. Please forgive me. The point I'm trying to make, or will make, is that the actual votes for the Labour Party were higher in the election of 2019 and 2017 that were achieved by Labour in this election. The share of the vote was for Labour over 41% in 2017, over 32% last time. This time, the national vote is only 33%, but that has rendered Labour with more than 250 Labour gains, because the right-wing vote between the Conservatives and Reform was split, whereas 5 years ago, it was not. And so it's in a first-past-the-post system. Any majority is grotesquely exaggerated by the first-past-the-post system. Any more proportional system would, yes, give Labour the largest number of MPs, but nowhere near this vast number they've got. And so there are issues there. Now, I haven't always supported proportional representation, but over the last 10 years or so, I've been thinking about it more and more. And I just wonder if a system that was designed for a two-party country really works when we have a considerable number of parties. And also on Thursday, the Reform Party got, I think 4 million votes, but only four or five MPs out of it. A number of independents, including me, were elected, usually on issues surrounding Gaza and the Middle East as one of the factors. And we will be a factor and an influence in the incoming parliament. The Greens also gained more seats than they've ever had before. Right. So there is a beginnings of a sort of political plurality in parliamentary representation, which hasn't always been there.
So we're on news time. We have to wrap up. I'll say this part. I mean, your point is well noted. In fact, South Africa does not have a constituency-based electoral system. It's very proportional representation. We tend to lose out on knowing who our MP is, and that's another issue completely. Yeah. But let's say, as we wrap up in just one line, how then do you see global politics changing by the different policies of what's happened with the new government in the UK as well as in France? And you got a very quick answer to that.
I hope global politics changes in being a force and a coherent force for peace in the Middle East as well as in Ukraine. But I also hope it's a force that changes economic issues into a search for economic equality and justice rather than the grotesque levels of inequality that are growing all the time.
Okay, Jeremy, we will certainly chat to you sometime soon again. I'm pretty sure about that. Much appreciate the insights that you've shared. Jeremy Corbyn, now an MP, an independent MP, where once he was the Labour Party elected leader in the UK. So there are things indeed change. Much appreciate your time. Slightly later, let's get the news headlines now with Daneo.
Thank you, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 3:30. The Garden Route and Little Karoo have not been spared the adverse weather conditions hitting the Western Cape. Low temperatures, strong winds and a dusting of snow on mountain tops have been seen in the region. Meanwhile, Gauteng residents are warned to brace themselves for an extremely cold night as temperatures are expected to plummet overnight to -4 degrees in Johannesburg and -2 in Tshwane. And a landslide caused by torrential rain at an illegal gold mine in Indonesia has killed at least 11 people. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Here's quite a big one. There's a tanker crash on the N3 at Heidelberg. This is south of Joburg. The N3 is closed completely. It looks like a full closure if you're routing down towards De Hoek's Plaza, wanting to get out of Gauteng, or you're arriving back into Gauteng after De Hoek's Plaza. You'll get into Heidelberg and then divert around the town centre. So the N3 is closed and some pretty heavily backed up traffic on the alternatives locally through there. Durban today, Mgeta Road at the train station. That's been slow all day today, going in and out to Durban. Victoria Embankment, leaving the CBD, is very busy. And some pass closures still with us in the Eastern Cape. R58 closed. That's the Barclay Pass option, that between Elliot and Barclay East. That route is closed. The Penhook Pass, the N6, has been closed as well today. And in Cape Town region, the R44 Clarence Drive remains closed until further notice. This is due to a truck that crashed this morning or broke down and just damaged some of the roadwork barriers there where the road is being fixed up and repaired after storms of last year. So Clarence Drive between Gordons Bay and Royals remains closed. Sir Larry's Pass will be the alternative route to cut back through Bottrafia and then down through to Claremont and Betty's Bay that way. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Chumi, our very own Minister of Sport, happy birthday to you. Let's start with
Thank you very much.
Are you fine with us saying it now? The whole country knows about it.
Yo.
Where are they going to send the cake? That's what I want to know.
You know, they must send it to the office, to SABC.
At the very least, I mean, let them, okay, they mustn't waste, but how about sending a digital cake, post it on, on Facebook as well as on Twitter, and on Instagram, because you'll find to me in all those places, right? Use that hashtag, The National Pulse, tag SFM Radio, tag me, and just say happy birthday. And use those, digital cake pictures. And there we are. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much, Ashraf.
Right, Minister of Sport, go ahead.
All right, a very good afternoon to you. We start things off with football this hour. Kaizer Chiefs are set to host Tanzania's reigning champions, Young Africans, in an inaugural annual Toyota Cup later this month. The groundbreaking preseason cup, as Amakosi describes it, will see the club face off against some of Africa's top football clubs during the off-season for the next 3 years as an extension of Chiefs' current sponsorship agreement with Toyota South Africa. Bloemfontein will host the first ever edition on the 28th of July at the Toyota Stadium.
Well, Bloemfontein is a home away from home, for us. It is a place where we have such a huge support base. And also, Bloemfontein hasn't had a lot of football, and we were pleased to see the Bafana game doing so well. And we're just excited to bring football back to Bloem. Also celebrating the heritage in Tata Malemela and Celtic and what they've represented in South African football, is to say thank you to them. And how can we keep growing football in Bloemfontein and make sure that we give the game back to our people?
That's Kaizer Chiefs Marketing Director Jessica Mutaung. Still staying with football, former Mamelodi Sundowns head coach Pitso Mosimane has expressed his sadness at the decision by his former club to release his successor and former assistant Rulani Mokoena. Speaking to SABC Sport, Mosimane, who promoted Mokoena to being his assistant at Sundowns in 2014, says that he really feels for Mokoena.
So now, the sad part is let go at Sundowns. I'm I'm not happy. You can feel my emotion. I'm not pretending. I just feel bad for him. Sundowns is a big club. Sundowns will sort themselves out. Sundowns is not about Pitso. Sundowns is not about Rulani. Coaches come and go.
Elsewhere, France go into tomorrow's Euro 2024 semi-final showdown against Spain, hoping that Kylian Mbappe can finally produce a performance worthy of his superstar status. The match in Munich is a mouth-watering prospect and a huge occasion, in particular for Mbappe, in his first major tournament, captaining his country, and just before he starts a new chapter in his career at Real Madrid. At 25, and having just completed his dream move to Champions League winners, Mbappe should be in the prime of his footballing life, and now it'll be interesting to see if he can go on to lift that trophy. In cricket, batsman Matthew Brisker has received his first call-up to South Africa's Test squad for their 2-match series in the West Indies next month. The 25-year-old captained South Africa A in a 4-day match against India A in December and has been included on the back of his good domestic form, where he had an average of 46 in the last domestic 4-day competition, including a top score of 188. Then Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie, says that he has instructed officials to release a comprehensive list of funding recipients from the department. That list will definitely include the details of the beneficiaries, amounts allocated, and reasons for funding, marking a shift towards transparency in support of the whole distribution. And I was just reading a tweet, I think it was from him, saying that gone are the days that the very same people will receive funding from the department with no explanation out of this funding. Then in rugby, the Springbok Sevens A side finished the Rugby Africa Sevens series played in Mauritius in second place. The South Africans were invited to participate in the tournament on short notice after one of the original contestants pulled out. And in women in sports today, the spotlight is on Glen Rose Xaba, who created new history yesterday by breaking Alana Meyer's South Africa's 10-kilometer record at the Absa Run Your City 10-kilometer in Durban, and she clocked that 10-kilometer in 31.12 seconds. How long does it take you, Ashraf, to run a 10-kilometer?
I normally walk a 10 kilometers. I sound like Gayton McKenzie now. Like, yeah.
You know, 31 minutes.
Yeah.
Usually, I think it would take me an hour or an hour and 10 minutes. But yeah, a big congratulations to her. With that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Okay, great. So we'll talk again, and then we'll talk about other important issues that are taking place. Yeah, perfect. Thanks. You. More sport in an hour.
It can never be freezing cold with SABC Sport on board this July.
The 12 Nations battle in the Hollywood Bets Kasapa Cup will reveal the ultimate Southern African champs.
Nzansi's Queens of the Beautiful Game display real passion in the Hollywood Bets Super League.
The Germans are in town. SV Vieren Wiesbaden tackles the Citizens and Stellies, while FC Augsburg clashes with TS Galaxy FC.
While Sport at 10 gives you a solid reason to stay awake on Wednesday nights.
TKO brings you in-depth analysis in the boxing world.
Top sport journalists, table-swirling conversations on the Jonas Vodcast. Meanwhile, Foot Afrique zooms into continental football.
Countdown to Paris goes downhill towards the Olympic Games Paris 2024, kicking off on 26 July.
NBA Lifestyle, Youth Sport Show Goats Like Us, Final Analysis, EFC 115, and many more. Happy Madiba Month.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Right. Here's, by the way, lots of talk about where we're off to on Thursday, right? And linked to all of that is exactly this point, right? The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference will take place, well, from the 10th, so 2 days' time, Wednesday to Friday. That's in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. So tune into the Full Circle, hosted by Bridget Masinga. And of course, the National Pulse, I'll be hosting it, but we'll also be there broadcasting live from Cape Town to get insights from the conference. I would suggest one way or the other, do not miss it. That's the bottom line.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, we're going to talk. I'm going to take your calls. I will take your WhatsApp comments as well as soon as I can, and the people tweeting and posting on other social media platforms too. We'll talk about France and the changes there coming up pretty shortly. But for now, let's talk to the Commissioner at the Public Service Commission. That's Anele Ngoia, who we're talking about, fascinating concerning this show is called the National Pulse. They have a report that very much links to the pulse of all the things that they do. The pulse of the public service, in fact, is what it is. Anele, I appreciate your time, and you are live on the National Pulse. In fact, we get to Anele, no, just in a second. Sorry, we'll do that in a moment. Here's one. Bongani from Otlange in Durban. The South African national anthem serves as a powerful symbol of unity, reflecting country's diverse languages, cultures, and historical struggles. It combines elements from the two songs in Nkosi Sikelel Africa, as well as the stem, and then translated as the call of South Africa. The anthem pleads for divine blessings and encourages people to unite for a healthier nation and the broader African continent's welfare. Interestingly, it modulates and ends in a different key, making it compositionally unique. Okay, I'm not the expert on that part, but I certainly get the point that you make. There are further opinions on that. Let's get further thoughts, okay? So here's a question about, here's the comment about Gaten McKenzie.
Hi, Ashraf. This is Saber in Stellenbosch. I'm not a fan of this facade of a GNU. I'm actually very angry about it. But when you look at a guy like Mackenzie, I'm really inspired by him. I was inspired from the clip that he broadcasted on his socials when he had just been appointed. And I like this passion. I hope he's going to have a competency to match his passion.
Okay, got that one. Let's get another. Well, I hear what you're saying. That's the point. It's certainly delivering lots of energy, isn't it? Water issues, we've been discussing it the other day in Johannesburg, and we said, hold it, man. Water issues and shortages has got to be part of our national agenda. So wherever you are in the country, if you have a water issue beyond one day, we want to know about it. Absolutely, okay? So feel free to comment tell us what your water problems are anywhere in the country. Okay, let's get back to the issue of the Public Service Commission with regard to their Pulse of the Public Service report with Anele Ngoia. Anele, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
And
right.
Good afternoon to the listeners.
Much appreciated. So I see that report ends 31st of March. Perhaps give us some key bullet points regarding the key issues of that report.
Thank you very much. You would remember that on a quarterly basis, we release this report to account to the members of the public on the work that the Public Service Commission is doing. And for this particular bulletin, we have different areas that we are covering on the bulletin, starting from our reflection on the outcomes of the elections, the PSC guide on governance for executive authorities and heads of department, as well as encouraging public servants to use integrity as a weapon against bribery and corruption. We also report on the qualifications of senior managers in the public service, and as well as public service reforms for professionalization. Then we've got standing items that are on our bulletin on a quarterly basis. The non-payment or late payment of suppliers by government departments, the complaints and grievances that we are getting as the Public Service Commission, as well as reflecting on the good news stories that we are getting as feedback from our citizens.
Now, it's interesting, just for us to understand it, when we talk about the Public Service Commission and its role, how related is that to one of the big buzzwords that we have in our country, which is service delivery or non-service delivery?
The work of the Public Service Commission is, of course, guided by Chapter 10 of the Constitution, which clearly outlines the constitutional values and principles. And then it goes further to do the work of the Public Service Commission, which, amongst other things, is to oversee the human resource practices in the public service, as well as to ensure that government departments do deliver services to the people.
And how successful are you in that? Because one thing is delivering a report, which I would think would be a signpost, a barometer for all of us to understand exactly where are those who are involved in public service, where they're at and what they're doing and what they're not doing.
We can say that we've got a sizable number of successes, but we also still have challenges where some of the executive authorities and accounting officers fail to implement the recommendations of the Public Service Commission. However, we've got a recourse in the event where our recommendations are not implemented. So far, we've been more successful than unsuccessful in terms of implementing our recommendations and conducting our work as the Public Service Commission.
So what happens with the recommendations? I mean, one is, who does the implementing? And let's take national government, for example. We have a seventh administration that kicks off their work shortly. What happens then with your recommendations?
We forward our recommendations to accounting officers as well as executive authorities, depending, of course, on the nature of the investigation or the inspection that we have conducted. For example, with regards to the very burning issue of the non-payment or the late payment of service providers. So what we do, we encourage service providers to come forth to the Public Service Commission and report such instances of non-payment, so that we can be able as the Commission to approach the relevant offices to follow up on their invoices. We insist on consequence management, but so far we've been successful in getting those junior officials, unfortunately, to be punished for not doing their work. However, we want to take it further and say, in most instances, it is the accounting offices or officers that are culprits in the non-payment of service providers. Therefore, we insist that the executive authorities take action against those accounting officers.
And I see the issue of non-payment of service providers is a big deal, isn't it? How acute is the problem?
It is very much acute. For example, if we can look in terms of what the DPSA or the National Treasury issued recently. They issued their annual report on the non-payment for the financial year of 2023-24, where they say the invoices paid after 30 days by national departments only, excluding provinces, were 108,917, the number of invoices. The value of those invoices is it amounts to 4.6 billion. Now you can imagine how many small businesses are affected by that. They go further to say, for example, those that are older than 30 days, that have not yet been paid at the end. You see, we are deep into another financial year. But at the end of the last financial year, which ended in March, there are still invoices that have not been paid. They amount to 1,427 invoices. The total value of those invoices is 53 million, which means these people have been paid for others for 12 months, others for 9 months, and so on and so forth. So it shows how acute that problem is. And that's why, as the Commission, we say we should not just report and say these invoices are not paid. There should be consequences to those people who fail to pay invoices.
Okay, let's leave it there and we'll leave it for whoever to answer the question about what the consequences should be. Anele Kogia, who's the commissioner for the Public Service Commission itself, appreciate your time. Right, what about your comments on that report, right? If you have an opinion, a strong opinion on this issue, either way, I want to know about it. 086 000 2032. No sitting on the fence on this one.
In the heart of darkness, a beacon of light emerges. A brand new season is coming your way with your 2024 Miss South Africa Top 30. Hosted by our reigning queen, Miss South Africa, we embark on a transformative journey. Join us for the spectacular new season of Crown Chasers.
Crown Chasers is back.
Starts 29 June at 8:30 p.m. only on S3 Open Up.
Nelson Mandela once said,
"It is in your hands to create a better world for all who live in it."
SAFM urges you to identify those in need around you and to do what you can to make a difference to them. Tata Mandela went further to say, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we led. SAFM celebrates Mandela Month.
Right, let me remind you once again, if you didn't get it right the first time round, watch out for the Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference. It's the very first one. It takes place from Wednesday up to Friday this week, in fact. It's in Cape Town. The theme is Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. And then the two shows that will be covering the conference extensively, the Full Circle with Bridget Masinga and the National Pulse, which I host, of course. And then you'll get some really important gold nuggets, if I can call it that, great insights from the conference.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, what happened in France? The new Popular Front in France has surprised many. So can I call it the French Revolution? Because there was an election, and it was a given what's going to happen, that Marine Le Pen's party was going to win it in a sort of landslide, but that didn't happen. So you've got Casualty 1, Marine Le Pen's party. You've got Emmanuel Macron, the leader, also he's come out second. And then you've had this big change that's happened now. So the party that nobody expected to win, that's the new Popular Front in this runoff election. Remember, that's how they do it in France, has come out and emerged as the strongest party in France. And what does that mean? I think is hugely impactful in terms of the possibilities. Professor John Keicher is the former research director of the Department of Politics and International Studies based at the University of Cambridge. Prof. Keicher, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. So I'm saying this, and I'm playing with words, and I'm saying French Revolution. Did we just witness a revolution of sorts in the last few days?
Well, it's been a revolution in the one sense, that is that nobody expected this to happen, and so in that sense it is. But it isn't a revolution yet, even if some of the parties that you mentioned, in particular Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is of France's party, which is called Unbowed, his movement, which is part of the Popular Front, his party is very revolutionary or potentially revolutionary. So if they get to control a government, which there is a possibility of, then it could mean some very revolutionary things happening in France.
So, okay, let's rewind. What actually has happened over the last few days that my audience needs to know?
Well, the French system is a two-round system. So the first round happened last Sunday, and in that round, the three parties, really, three groupings, the National Front, Jean-Luc Mélenchon and his band of brothers, the New Popular Front, and Macron's centrist parties were vying for positions and seats in the National Assembly. During that, just after that first round, the centre and the left got together in order to block candidates from the National Front. By withdrawing their candidates, they gave the second round much more chance for people to beat Marine Le Pen. And that is exactly what's happened. As you said, first is the New Popular Front, second is Macron's centrist party, and third now is the National Front. Although the National Front, it should be said, is not out.
Okay, so what you sort of alluded to a government being formed. So yes, no, maybe. What needs to happen next?
Well, they need to choose a prime minister, first of all, and then people need to coalesce around that prime minister. But the problem is that this is a hung parliament. There is no one of those three groupings that we've mentioned. There's no one of them that has an outright majority, and there's only one that has a little bit of a lead on those, and that's the National Popular Front. So what is the New Popular Front? So what is likely to happen, or should happen, is that somebody from that New Popular Front should be chosen to become the next Prime Minister. The problem is, will they have any support in the National Assembly?
And what do you think?
Well, I don't think that they will. The big problem now is going to be a lot of backroom dealing to try and engineer some kind of outright majority that could support that Prime Minister. And that is going to be ludicrously difficult. The French Fifth Republic, which the French live under, their political system, is not made for this kind of thing at all. And the French do not have a culture of coalition. So binding together extremely disparate groups from communists to fairly right-wing people is going to be very difficult.
How? So in South Africa, we've just gone through a situation where the ruling party that's been ruling for over 30 years, the African National Congress, was unable to get the 50% plus one needed to govern on its own. And therefore, we now have a coalition government, right? With the ANC being the lead party and a whole lot of others in place. Could we have a situation in France, as you said, they're not used to coalitions, that the New Popular Front, as the party with the most votes, but not a majority party, being outmaneuvered, and the other parties coming together to still ensure that they would govern? Is that how it could possibly work or not?
Well, that could happen, yes. The scenario you describe is a possibility. And in that case, what would happen is that President Macron, who is of the centre, would wish to get his troops to team up with the softer, slightly more right-wing part of the New Popular Front, to break them off and try and form a coalition himself, which would then support a prime minister who would be of the same political colouring as Monsieur Macron.
And lastly, as we get on to news time, let's work on the basis that the New Popular Front would effectively form a government. How is that going to change domestic and global politics for France, very quickly?
Well, the programme is extremely radical, probably the most radical programme that France's Fifth Republic since 1958 has ever had. There are some extremely radical policies that will change how France is run if the financial markets, don't intervene before.
And that form of radicalism, perhaps we need to talk about in more detail sometime down the line. Appreciate your insights, Prof. John Kaicher, former research director of the Department of Politics and International Studies at the University of Cambridge. What do you make of what's going on in France and what's going to happen next? Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock with Daneo Mataung.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories. Garden route also impacted by inclement weather, and deadly landslide hits illegal gold mine in Indonesia. A very good afternoon. The Garden Route and Little Karoo have not been spared the adverse weather conditions hitting the Western Cape. Low temperatures, strong winds and a dusting of snow on mountain tops have been seen in the region, with a level 6 storm surge warning for George. High waves and strong winds pose a significant threat to coastal communities and infrastructure. There have already been reports of wind damage to some residential properties. With more rain on the way, localized flooding is also possible. Authorities are on high alert. Niels Bernard is the fire chief in George.
We are still expecting the worst to come during the late afternoon. And then we just want to urge the residents to stay at home, stay inside, keep yourself warm. And for the informal settlements, please don't make fires inside the informal settlements because that can cause a hazard for us. Stay away from the roads, especially with the excessive wind speeds that's going out for trees that can fall over.
Meanwhile, in Gauteng, residents are warned to brace themselves for an extremely cold night as temperatures are expected to plummet overnight to -4 degrees in Johannesburg and -2 in Tshwane. The South African Weather Service says temperatures are forecast to pick up from tomorrow. Joburg Emergency Services has urged residents to be vigilant and exercise caution when using heating devices and not to leave them unattended. Forecaster Celeste Fourie.
As the residents of Gauteng has probably noted that it is nice and windy outside at times. We are now just experiencing that nice cold wind and cold temperatures just behind the cold front. But yeah, it's from tomorrow on the temperatures should start recovering nicely.
In other news, the memorial service for the 2 children who were allegedly murdered by an 18-year-old suspect is underway at a local church in Pinar outside Mbombela in Mpumalanga. The bodies of 6-year-old Junior Mabandla and 3-year-old Peaceful Khoza were exhumed last week after they had gone missing. Locals came out in their numbers to show their support to both grieving families. Moving to the Northern Cape, the Galeshewe Magistrates Court in Kimberley has sentenced 33-year-old Vincent Love to 15 years imprisonment for attempted murder. In October last year, a man and his friend were walking to a local spaza shop when the accused approached them and aggressively demanded money which they did not have. Love stabbed the victim once in the chest and fled the scene. Police spokesperson Merapelo Pilani.
The accused was charged for attempted murder. He was successfully convicted and sentenced and declared unfit to possess a firearm.
Lastly, a landslide caused by torrential rain at an illegal gold mine in Indonesia has killed at least 11 people. Dozens more are believed to be buried under the mud. The incident occurred in the central island of Sulawesi. Pictures circulating on social media show houses flattened by the landslide. An emergency team says continuous rain and roads blocked by debris are hampering the rescue operations. Recapping the top story this hour, the Garden Route and Little Karoo have not been spared the adverse weather conditions hitting the Western Cape. Low temperatures, strong winds and a dusting of snow on mountaintops have been seen in the region. Headlines at 4:30 for SAFM News. I am Dino Mutaung.
In your sports this hour, Fourie breaks SA record as Sekhodiso clinches second and India says Rohit to remain test and one-day captain. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A top story on the traffic desk just south of Joburg at Heidelberg. The N3 full closure today in the central Heidelberg area. A tanker crash and a Hazcam spillage. It's a full closure whether you're heading south to Durban or heading north back into Joburg, with motorists being diverted off the N3 and then rerouted in some heavy conditions through the central Heidelberg area. Crossing to Durban, a breakdown before Spaghetti Junction in the roadworks. The N2 south is backlogging quite heavily already from Inanda Road. A lot of localised congestion around South Coast Road and Bayhead Road. A section of South Coast Road is closed just north of Bayhead Road for road resurfacing, so that's put a lot of truck congestion in and around the sort of Umbilo and Bayhead areas today. Cape Town, the R44 Clarence Drive remains closed until further notice, so there's no way through between Gordons Bay and Royals using Clarence Drive. That's due to a truck that crashed in the roadworks this morning. To get that way, to get out to Pringle Bay, Betty's Bay, Claymont, you'll have to use N2 Sir Lowry's Pass, go out through Crabo, Hohook Pass, cut back at Bottrafia, and then take the R44 in through Claymont. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So this morning I sort of laying in bed on this very chilly Johannesburg morning. I mean a chilly South African morning I gather. And sort of listening to something about some potential delays or maybe no delays with the Gautrain. I wondered what had happened. Find out later, of course, there was this issue around a strike. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa have revised its wage increase demands for striking Gautrain workers to 9%. Earlier today, aggrieved employees affiliated to the union downed tools, and this is the issue, at the maintenance worker workshop depot that's in Midrand. Initially, the demand was for a hike of 13%. Last week, NUMSA served the Bombela Operating Company, which operates the Gautrain, with a 48-hour strike notice. Workers have been demanding a wage hike from the company since April, so that is an ongoing issue, but it certainly has come to a head today. We'll get two different takes on it. We'll chat to a representative, the CEO of the Gautrain Management Agency, in a few minutes' time. But first up, in fact, we got both. So we got Tsepo Gobe coming up later on. But for now, Pakamile Glube Majola is with me, the NUMSA spokesperson. Thank you, Pakamile. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. So, Kev, you've heard my intro. Perhaps let's start with where are you at right now with regard to this issue, this wage negotiation issue?
Well, I can confirm that as of right now, the CCMA has offered to embark on what they call Section 150 mediation. And it's calling on parties to basically sign and agree. And NUMSA has agreed that it will be participating in this mediation, which is going to be held and chaired by the CCMA. The goal of the CCMA is to try and assist us to resolve the current impasse.
And you've gone for that route because what? Is direct conversations, negotiations with the Gautrain management not yielding results, not possible? What?
So this is not necessarily NUMSA initiating it. What happens is that if there is a strike, particularly a strike of this nature, which results in interruptions or disruptions in public transport, the CCMA may reach out to the parties in an attempt to get them to come closer together. And in this case, they have done so. They have reached out to both parties, and they'd like us to participate in this mediation. Of course, as a trade union, we do welcome this opportunity. I was actually in an interview a few hours ago on Power FM with the CEO of the GMA, Mr. Gobe, where he indicated in that interview that he was also very keen for the union and themselves as Gautrain to come to sit down with us so that we can try and resolve the impasse and resolve the dispute.
Well, I think it's a given that we all want it resolved. What for you would be, not so much the win position, but the win-win position, because you want a lasting winning relationship between all parties, isn't it?
Oh, we absolutely do. That is always our goal. We are willing to compromise on our demands. We've been saying that consistently. Even last year, we actually averted a strike at the Gautrain because we did compromise on some of the demands, and we were able to settle on a wage increase that was suitable to all parties. And that continues to be our position. It makes no sense to us to settle on agreements that are unsustainable. But in this instance, how we got here is because we were dealing with a management that frankly was not engaging in a meaningful manner. They were not even sort of trying to meet us halfway in the negotiations. Our initial demand, for example, had been a 13% across the board wage increase. By the time we deadlocked, we had reduced that from 13% to 9%. Gautrain management offered 5.6%, and they never budged at any point. They never made any offers. They never dealt with some of the other demands. There's a demand around bonus payments, for example. The fact that the Gautrain management rewarded itself with bonuses, whereas blue-collar workers who helped actually get the company to perform did not get the same bonuses. And that is a problem. If there's going to be a bonus structure, it must be the same for all workers. Workers in Gautrain, blue-collar workers, are subjected to a performance-based bonus. but the management seemingly is not, and that is definitely unfair. So those are some of the burning issues that we really need them to resolve if we are going to resolve the strike.
All right, let's do this then. I mean, you can stay on the line, but I won't talk to you again because that was the plan. We'll go one after the other. So Tsepo Khobe with me, the CEO of the Gautrain Management Agency. Tsepo, appreciate you giving off your time here on the National Pulse. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, you've had the advantage of listening in on that conversation with Pagamile, right? So without going to the very beginning, I mean, perhaps the biggest issue of all is like, how do we resolve this problem? What can you suggest?
Ashraf, I think we are much more closer than we were by the time the morning started. And in as much as the negotiations are not directly with us as a management agency, but rather with the Bombela operating company. By the time we set off in the morning, we were still discussing at a very far, lengthy part, and we were far apart from each other in having a conversation and we were not even having a conversation. We had stopped having a conversation. So I can confirm that by this evening, a series of a marathon of meetings will start where we will start talking to each other because that is much more important, getting the parties back on the table. It is important that we start having the conversation and ultimately get the parties to be able to speak to each other and get this thing resolved. We stepped in and stepped in to be able to avert a long strike because for us what becomes important is us running a safe service and also running a service that empowers the economy of Gauteng as a whole.
Well, I think there's no question how critically important the Gautrain is, right? And that applies to, all rail for the entire country. So where then do you sit? I understand the meeting's going to take place, and I'm glad that you say you're closer than you were this morning. But, the initial demand was 13%, then 9%. Certainly the National Union of Metal Workers have suggested that, your group have been rather indifferent up to now. So what for you is your win-win situation?
I think what do they call it? Remember the biggest, the biggest challenge that we have, the system loses, the brand loses its reputation. But bigger than anything else is that the employees themselves, during the time when they're not working, they don't get paid. And for me, I always worry about a world in which, in our current economic state, there are families that go without. And to me, it's us getting through the issues in such a way that we all can get back to a point where everybody's working, everybody is there to be able to provide service as a whole. And to me, a win goes beyond the issues on the table are the issues on the table, and you must never make it small that they are not big issues. They are big issues, but it is about the workers themselves finding benefit. And as we look at shared value as an organization and also as a brand, it's about us making money, but making sure that everybody else also feels that they're actually benefiting from what we do.
Because, here's the point, to the public, and I understand that negotiations take place and they can be rather protracted. But for the general public who really wants South Africa as a country to work at all levels of society, when you have protracted negotiations that seems to have a dead end, and you have protracted strikes as well, and then we as the consumers or commuters in this case feel like we're bearing the brunt of it all, it becomes extremely unhealthy. Can't these issues be escalated much quicker? It may sound I'm being rather naive saying that, but I'm just saying this is an annual thing, an annual or biannual thing. It happens, right? Why does it have to go on that long? Why can't resolutions be reached much quicker than they are right now?
I'm okay with the question, Ashraf, and it's not an unfair question. I think that with us as it is right now, with us being a PPP and having a concession structure that then has the operator reporting to the concessionaire and then ultimately to us, it's that the parties and the team in the concession company must find each other first before we start in. And yes, I agree. This should have been something that we would have walked into much earlier and then have the conversation about it much earlier. But sometimes you follow the contractual structures. But let that be a lesson learned in managing these issues, because it doesn't benefit anybody. It does not help us at all, allowing it to get to this point. And therefore, we need to manage it differently.
And your last thoughts on that last point, we need to manage it differently. So in this relationship between management and workers, or workers, employer and employees, how then do you use your insights to manage things differently?
What becomes important is that, in as much as we have a long distance relationship with the operator staff, it is part of the bigger whole. And therefore, one has to be able to say, how do we ensure that we are in touch with what is going on with the operator staff? And because remember, they're not negotiating with us as the management agency directly. I need to reiterate this all the time, because they are negotiating with the operating company. And therefore, at a point when the impasse did occur, we also needed to be able to say, well, can we step in immediately now, and so that we can avoid a strike as such? But as it is, we have to be able to make sure that we don't repeat the same mistake as well.
Well, I mean, that's really what we want. We don't have a go slow Gautrain. That's a contradiction in terms, as I think everybody listening in will gather. So thank you for your time. That's Tsepo Khobe, the CEO of the Gautrain Management Agency. And before that, we had Pakamile Klubi Majola from NUMSA, the spokesperson there. Well, there you are. Make of that what you will. But I think the big issue in terms of demands, there's been a strike that's taken place. There's negotiation. There's mediation that's taking place. And as the CEO has said, we are much closer to a deal than we were this morning. Let's hope that is the case and that it is a effectively win-win deal. You listening in, you have an opinion. I have my point. What's your point on that Gautrain strike? What's your point on the conversation I had with Jeremy Corbyn earlier on? You can listen to the podcast anytime. Feel free to do that. And the conversation around the Public Service Commission and the non-payment amongst the non-payment of government suppliers is one of the biggest issues that's emerged there. And then what's happened in France, and of course what's happening in the country, gripped by severe cold weather, frosty, icy, sleety, hailstones, snowy conditions in parts of the Eastern Cape, Western Cape as well, and Gauteng area as well. Pretty cold, and expected to be cold and miserable, can I say that, for the better part of the next few days, so I understand. We'll pick up on all that in a moment.
In South Africa, 1 in 5 children under the age of 13 is overweight or obese. Sign a petition to demand strong warning labels on unhealthy packaged food. And don't forget to catch the next episode of Chew on This at healer.org on Thursday, 27 June from 3 p.m. Young people tell us how big food companies are feeding them lies.
It can never be freezing cold with SABC Sport on board this July.
The 12 Nations battle in the Hollywood Bets Kosafa Cup will reveal the ultimate Southern African champs.
Nzansi's Queens of the Beautiful Game display real passion in the Hollywood Bet Super League.
The Germans are in town as Vivian Wiesbaden tackles the Citizens and Stellies, while FC Augsburg clashes with TS Galaxy FC.
While Sport at 10 gives you a solid reason to stay awake on Wednesday nights.
TKO brings you in-depth analysis in the boxing world.
Top sport journalists table-spoiling conversations on the Jonas Vodcast. Meanwhile, Foot Afrique zooms into continental football.
Countdown to Paris goes downhill towards the Olympic Games Paris 2024, kicking off on 26 July.
NBA Lifestyle, Youth Sport Show Goats Like Us, Final Analysis, EFC 115, and many more. Happy Madiba Month.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
I hope you're going to either be there or, better still for you, just listen to the shows. And what I'm talking about is the Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference. It's the very first one. It takes place starting on Wednesday up to Friday. It's in Cape Town. And the theme is Africa Unlocked. Unlocking Africa's Growth. It's a very important theme, don't you think? So you can tune in, 2 shows covering it, The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, and this show, The National Pulse, because that is a reflection of the National Pulse naturally, right? Listen out for all of that to get insights from the conference.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
And of course, I'm off to Cape Town in a couple of days' time, and I understand Joburg's freezing, but Cape Town's even worse in a very, very different way. Let's understand what actually is going on, because one thing is about people, saying brr about the weather, and it's just, you're bitter and you're rather miserable. But the other is issues of, extreme discomfort, homelessness, loss of lives, people, just they absolutely frozen and there's nothing else. And there's so many issues that we often take for granted, but they come up and they come up every year. So the Development Action Group, particularly concerned about the exposure to these extreme weather conditions in the Cape, issues I mentioned, cold, wet, windy conditions. And they have particularly looked at the issues of the informal settlements, which I think is sometimes often people in regular homes tend to overlook completely. So the NGO is currently reaching out to new cabinet ministers to make suggestions on how to improve the living conditions of the most vulnerable. It's an important issue. Let's find out more about that with Muhseen Hendricks, who's the Executive Director of the Development Action Group. Muhseen, you're live with the National Pulse. Hi.
Thank you very much for having us. Hello.
Much appreciated. Right. So it's interesting. I mean, the last point of what I've just read is your call to the newly elected ministers in the cabinet to come up with suggestions. Does it suggest that the current situation is just not working and not just not sustainable, but is actually intolerable, and so it continues?
Yeah, I think what we're pointing to is, disaster response by its nature is very reactive, right? But where we want to position ourselves and where we have positioned ourselves over the last almost 40 years is to come up with more long-term sustainable solutions. So one of the things that we're advocating for is, part of why people find themselves in really vulnerable positions is because of the availability of well-located land that is suitable for habitation. That part of our delivery is not necessarily sound, and so that has developed a research produced knowledge around municipal land release. We've done this in 4 metros across South Africa, and we basically unpack the different processes that we need to go through, that municipalities need to go through to make land available. And so that is one key important component of how we do mitigation and how do we do more long-term planning that prevents these disasters, but it's also in the context of climate change. The second thing is that we need to this needs to be an ongoing campaign. Every winter there's a reaction, there's a response to it, and then we kind of move on. So we need to find creative ways of how to sustain this. And one of the things that DAG is involved in with other partners is the Asibit campaign, where we are looking at understanding what is happening in informal settlements, where are the needs, communicate that to the municipalities around basic services. And we've kind of taken the next step to the campaign is what kind of solutions can we come up with, as local residents within informal settlements to those needs. And I think this is really a partnership with municipalities so important, is that the longevity of this partnership where we start to maintain these settlements, because communities, they understand, they know when the flooding is coming and when it's coming, but it's about having the resources to mitigate that. And that's, there's a lot of new ministers in different departments, and so we actually, we want to share. We want to share the knowledge, the experience that we have, and continued collaboration with government to say, we can't do it on our own, you can't do it on our own, communities can't do it on our own. How can we work together, not just when it comes to a disaster, but how do we prevent that and how we mitigate the impact of that.
Does it suggest that, the issues of informal settlements and vulnerability and compounded vulnerability at the time of, cold and icy weather like you're experiencing now, right? That these issues, the fact that we bring it up every year, and you've sort of alluded to that does it suggest there's been a lack of collaboration between groups like yours, right, acting on behalf of the people, and in this case, whether it's a city or local government and other developmental organizations that should be able to sort out the problem once and for all? Does it suggest there's been a perpetual disconnect?
Yeah, I'm saying, sorting out the problem once and for all. And I think there's definitely, there's an urgency in a way we respond to growing informality. And there's also a need to create those partnerships between different stakeholders. And then there's also a need to make sure that we support people in informal settlements to manage the informal settlements. So it's not just, and having the right support from municipalities, from different departments within government, to support those communities managing their own informal settlements. Mm-hmm. And I think that partnership is critical in terms of being able to mitigate, to respond, but then also to have a vision of how, when we do rebuild after disaster, that there's actually a vision of how we can create, put down the building blocks of something more permanent, right, and something more formal. And so often we just replace one structure, one shack with another shack. There needs to be that vision of, okay, so we're now going to rebuild with it, but now how do we rebuild knowing that next year we're going to have floods again?
Well, it's a wish list with length and with depth as well, and let's see what comes through. Mohsin, keep us in touch and informed. We need to know what's going on and finally get to a complete winnable solution there. Mohsin Hendricks, Executive Director of the Development Action Group, speaking to us about the icy conditions of the Western Cape and how it impacts the most vulnerable. And we'll take your calls on that issue as well. And I see, Eric making the point, Ashraf, I always wonder how the homeless manage to stay warm in the very cold weather. Well, you're spot on. Percy, let's get your thoughts from Matlosana. Hi, Percy.
Hey, how are you, Ashraf?
Good talking to you, man. Really good. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm not fine. I can't say I'm happy.
You're not fine.
Yes, things are bad. There is a place here in Northwest called Ottosdal.
Yeah.
There is a place called Iraq there. Those residents who stay there almost 18 years, they don't have water. As we speak, there is a service provider who appointed, since was appointed last year. He put tap here after 10th Street, he put tap. There is no water flow there, but it's something normal. We have to keep quiet.
So wait, help me understand. Let's understand this. Are you saying there's no water for 18 years or there's just no water now?
18 years, Ashraf. 18 years, they don't have water. There is a service provider who's been appointed, I think it's been 3 years, who's dealing with the issue of water, but there is no water flow there. Things are bad there. Bad. If I say I'm not going to say it, I'm fine.
Well, I'm glad that you're not saying you're fine, because one of the things that we, as you know, we've been saying now as part of this national pulse is we have to pick up the issues that move the national pulse daily. And and what's very clear is the issue of no water supply in many parts of South Africa has become like as normal as winter coming after summer. It's going to happen. So, what can we do about it? And you're right. It's not acceptable. So, Percy, last thing, we're on to news time. Just last thing. Local representative, ward councillor, I would take it you and others have spoken to them. Have they ever come back? Is it a big issue in your community?
We did. They keep promising us they are busy. They are still waiting for their money, but we don't see that. They keep promising us things that we don't see. If we go in
all right. I'll tell you what. I'm going to get Keys, my producer in Temba, to say, hold it. Let's see if we can get someone from that community to talk to us about it. Okay, let's do that. All right.
Thank you.
I think we need to absolutely tackle that issue. Much appreciate your time, Percy, in Matlosana or near Ottosdal, as he has suggested. Right. We have more to come. Lots more to come, and do raise the issues that for you moves the national pulse. Right now it's 4:30. Here's the news headlines with Daneo Matau.
Very much, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 4:30. The Public Service Commission has urged the new cabinet to serve ethically and with professionalism. In other news, road users have been asked to avoid the route between Qwaqwa and Clarence in the Free State due to felt fires in the area. And West African leaders at regional body ECOWAS are grappling with the decision by the military rulers of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger to form their own grouping. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy delays on Joburg's N3. It's a crash scene down at Linksfield Road running south, and the traffic very quickly parking all the way back through to Marlborough Drive at Limbro Park. It's a heavy one to down that N3 south. Further to the south, the N3 closed at Heidelberg. It's a full closure due to a truck crash and a Heschem spillage. It's closed north and southbound with traffic diverting largely along the sort of R23 through the central Heidelberg area, and that is incredibly heavily backed up. As you can imagine, all the truck traffic both ways thundering through central Heidelberg today. Durban, some problems on the N2 highway going south. It's a breakdown in the roadworks before Spaghetti Junction. That's heavy coming from Nunta Road. Northbound, it's a crash in the construction before you get to Umgena Road. So some real pressure going north through Spaghetti Junction. And behind that, the N3 backing up to around about Felix Clemini as you struggle to get off the N3 outbound and into the N2. Cape Town, the M5 south from Maitland down towards the Kenilworth area, down towards Racecourse Road is staying slow. And no traffic lights on 35th Avenue at Stellenbosch Arterial and Robert Sebukwe. So that's all a bit busy. Top end of the airport, and the R44 Clarence Drive remaining closed until further notice. If you need to get from Gordons Bay around to sort of Royales, Pringle Betty's or Claymont, Sir Larry's Pass and Botrafia, it's going to be the long way round. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Tell you what, Jimmy, I didn't watch Wimbledon over the weekend, even yesterday. But I watched a lot, not on TV, but I watched a lot of highlights on social media, and some of the movements were just magic. But okay, you're updating us with the latest scores now, right?
Yes, I'm updating you with the latest scores at Wimbledon. On the women's side of things, fourth seed Elena Rybakina is through to the Wimbledon quarterfinals after her opponent Anna Kalinskaya retired from the match due to a wrist injury. Meanwhile, Emma Raducanu is out after losing 6-2, 5-7, 6-2 to qualifier Lulu Sun. And Coco Gauff is also unfortunately out after losing to American Emma Navarro. Meanwhile, on the men's side of things, Alex de Minaur is 2 sets up against Arthur Fils and currently trailing 2-1 in the fourth set. And Taylor Fritz is currently leading in their first set. That match just got underway earlier on, and he's leading 3-2 against Alexander Zverev. And we'll definitely keep you up to date with all the update that is coming from Wimbledon. Then, with only 51 days to go to the Paris Paralympic Games, the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee announced an initial squad of 26 to represent Team South Africa. Many still have the opportunity to qualify for the Paralympics, including the para-athletics, para-judo, para-triathlon and wheelchair tennis, which means that more names will be added before the team departs in August. And just looking at that list, it includes some gold medalists, including Peter Dupree, who will be in cycling, Luzon Kutsia in athletics, and Cheryl James in athletics too, while double gold medalist Ntando Mahlangu unfortunately will not travel to Paris as his main event, which is the men's T61 200 meter, has been scraped, and he also did not qualify for his long jump class. In the meantime, Prudence Khodiso suffered her first 800 meter defeat of the season in her sixth outing. It was with no grace though to finish behind world leading Keeling of Britain, and she won in 1 minute 57 seconds, whilst Khodiso crossed the line in 1 minute 58 seconds just to cling on that second spot. Then moving on to football, Angola coach Pedro Gonçalves says that his decision to continue his role during the COSAFA Cup has been justified after his Chargers won the tournament. They thumped Namibia 5-0 at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium in Gqeberha, while some national teams, including host Bafana Bafana, excused their head coaches from being in the dugout. Gonçalves decided that he's going to stay, and it definitely paid off for him. Then in cricket, Rohit Sharma will stay on as captain of India's Test and One-Day teams. The country's cricket board confirmed after he ended his T20 international career with a World Cup win, and Rohit led India to the T20 title last month, ending the Cricket Mad Nation's global trophy drought since 2013. Rohit, Virat Kohli and Ravindra Jadeja announced their T20 exit after the win over South Africa, and it was also the last match of outgoing coach Rahul Dravid. Then finally, in grassroots sports, the National School Sport Championship is making a call out to schools to register and participate in the football under-15 competition. That competition is going to take place from the 8th to the 11th of August, and you can register your school on the website of the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. There's actually some success stories where back in 2023, 3 athletes from the Ubuntu Academy were selected for the South Africa under-17 boys team. So this National School Sport Championship for under-15s is worth registering your school and having your team competing.
So I like this because, we've spoken about the need to pay serious attention to grassroots. So what actually happens? Schools around the country, they can register
on the website of the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and then obviously it has to be under 15s, and then they're going to be competing from the 8th to the 11th of August.
Okay. I think maybe the broader issue is, what about them? And maybe it's done already. Maybe there's a portal that all schools, all grassroots organizations plug into, which obviously must be governed managed by the Department of Sport in this case here, that and match up their needs all the time, whether it's school needs, personal needs, one individual who has to travel to, I don't know, Amsterdam because he's won an award or can compete in some organization. It can't be that they must go to the communities and go and look for $50 each and have like a stock value. It can't be that, isn't it? So
a conversation actually worth having with the department.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, more. Anything else?
No.
We're going to talk more sports in our Wimbledon and all as we get to the finals. I think this weekend, absolutely.
Sakina, we are vindicated as the Patriotic Alliance because at local level, we have always said that the DA is very arrogant, is very rude, it wants to be the boss.
And this is very unsettling. If it's unsettling for us as politicians, it's also unsettling for the citizens. And you can actually feel the crispness in the air, Sakina, that the people are tense.
Deputy President Kenny Kunene, and we also have African Christian Democratic Party's spokesperson in Gauteng, Bishop Dalton Adams.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM. Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's get to the markets as always with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, local and global markets, go for it.
Afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to the listeners. Ashraf, remember last week the JSE firmed 1.1%, the Rand firmed 1.2%, and based on September rate cut received a major boost. That's in the wake of Friday's job report showing that April and May's job gains in the US were revised lower, overshadowing the better-than-expected payrolls gains in June and pointing to signs of slowing when it comes to the labor market. But the Fed officials have recently signaled that more confidence is needed before dropping the X on rates, and markets are digesting the unexpected results of France's snap elections, which leaves the left-wing grouping without enough seats to form a government. Markets see that as positive as the far right are kept at bay, and market participants will be looking to U.S. Central Bank Chairman testimony to the Congress that is Tuesday and Wednesday, as well as China's inflation on Wednesday, plus U.S. inflation on Thursday, and locally fact that load shedding has been suspended for more than 100 days in a row provides grounds for hope that our May manufacturing and mining production data due on Thursday will show continued year-on-year increases, and we know that the stocks have been gaining on growing expectations that interest rate cuts are imminent, so markets constantly search for any clues of any indication of when will rate cuts start, and the German exports fell more than expected in May, and that is due to weak demand
demand coming from China, US, and European countries. Ashraf, is worth noting that Americans are playing the stock market in record numbers, with almost 3 in 5 investing in stocks, and oil prices are falling after gaining for 4 weeks as supply disruption worries eased on hopes of a ceasefire deal when it comes to Gaza, but the potential impact of Hurricane Beryl on supplies kept the slide in check. We see Brent crude is down 1% at $85 a barrel, and the euro metal traders are waiting for more clues when it comes to US interest rates cut from Fed chair testimony in key inflation data. And Ashraf, China didn't buy more gold for a second month in a row, but India and Poland added to their holdings. Gold reached a record high in May, supported by central bank buying, geopolitical tensions, and expectations of rate cuts. As we are talking, gold is down 0.6% at $2,376. Platinum is down a whopping 2.5% at $1,002. And the DAX is up 0.2%. FTSE CAC flat. The Dow is up 0.4%. S&P up 0.1%. The JSE is also flat, with our resources down almost 1%. Our industrials are flat, but our financials are up 0.5%. And the rand is 18.10, firmed almost 0.5%, to the US dollar, 23.26 to the pound, and 19.63 to the euro.
Okay, and that's it. So we'll talk again tomorrow. Makwe, thanks for your time as always.
Pleasure.
There we are, Makwe Masilela, right. Okay, we're going to we'll take your calls on any of the issues that you feel, moves the national pulse. What for you do you feel the strongest about to want to voice your opinion? That's one thing, whatever it is. It could be amongst the many conversations we had. If you tuned in from the very beginning, I made the point about that powerful rendition of the national anthem and how a national anthem can... It is a mobilizer. It does have that ability. There's no question about it, okay? So it's an anthem of unity, and it does, a nation in unity, even if it's fleeting. The question is, how do you extend it from fleeting to permanent? That's one thing. Comments on what's happening in Cape Town, the icy weather, the homelessness, some of the other issues as well. Feel free to comment on all those things. Jeremy Corbyn's interview that I did, really important one, and what's going on in France and the changes around that. Okay, here's a couple around Eskom that I think you need to just be aware of.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. A plea to you, please, on our behalf. Please ask Eskom to help us. We've had no electricity now. It's 24 hours. It is pouring here. We're getting snow. I'm in Lesotho, Queenstown. We're getting snow. There is heavy winds running at about 35 kilometers per hour. We are freezing. We are freezing. I bought electricity last week. I'm done now. I have no money. I can't even buy paraffin. We are frozen. Please, can they attend to this? They know it is the illegal connections that are affecting this. Please, Ashraf. This is Faith. Please.
Well, tell you what, with a name like Faith, just hold on to it. That's the first thing. Number two, I'm really sorry about your problem. And I think that's really the issue. There are issues around service delivery that we take for granted. You may have heard me talking about no water in my community, which is in a suburb in Joburg, for about 10 days or something like that. There's water now, but it's just ridiculous. So I hear what you're saying. I think your plea is a plea of desperation, right? And again, we can't solve it 100%, but I think what we must do, certainly with water and the issues of power supply, we as a show, calling ourselves the National Pulse, must have our fingers on the pulse of the nation, and I've got keys in Temba to hold it. Let's see if we can follow up on that issue as well, to say we need to get some answers, like what's the story around that. It can't just be that you call in and then it's like, oh, okay, nice call, sorry, bye. We have to be able to do something. I don't have the answers, but we must work towards those answers. So I hear you. Let's see if we can get them. I don't know when, but let's see if we can get them to give us some answers. Okay. There's more. This one there. Numsa may make a note of it.
Afternoon, Ashraf. It's William in Limpopo. I hate Numsa with every bone in my body. Numsa collapsed. SAA. Now it's busy with BOC, Gautrain. I worked for both BOC and Mango Airlines. And always, NUMSA will make outrageous demands. I don't know if the intention is to see every employer bankrupt or insolvent in South Africa. Thank you, Ashraf.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I don't think I can't speak on behalf of them, but it can't be to make them bankrupt, because if they're bankrupt, then these employees linked to NUMSA are also out of jobs. But there has been a sense that there's a very unequal. I think there's no question that employers, management, senior management will earn more than blue collar workers. I think let's accept that's a reality, because the managers take big risks in terms of often investing money. If they're owners, if they're not owners, they take big risks in terms of the type of decisions they make. And I had a chat about this the other day at home. That's to say, don't underestimate the value of a good strategic insight that you can share to people to solve problems. That's why leadership gets paid what they are. But let's also accept the fact that it is so hopelessly uneven that it is a problem. It's completely lopsided. So maybe somewhere in between is this reality. I think the Gautrain CEO spoke about shared value, didn't he? Right, there we are. Obokeng in Joburg, hello.
Hi, Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good indeed. Right, good talking to you, and give us your thoughts.
Thank you, brother. Look, I wanted to echo the sentiments of the brother that called from Ottosdal with regards to water. So I'm originally from Delareyville in Manonyani or Middleton. We are struggling with water so much, and remember, in the villages we are having animals, we are trying to farm due to the unemployment levels that are there. But the issue of water is really not being attended at all. And we really, as well, from Tsoaying municipality, are asking for that assistance, because we dependent on water. Our grandfathers are still having animals and all, and without water, life is so difficult.
Well, there's no question it's so difficult. And you know what's a lousy part? Like, it's not just something that just surfaced this week. It's part of our lives. It affects different people differently. When it affects me, I freak out. And then for 12 months in the year or 11 months and it doesn't affect me, I don't say a word. And it affects somebody else every other day. And the fact is, when you look at the level of disgruntlement amongst people regarding service delivery, I mean, I think the issues of water and electricity are like number one and number two. I can't even decide which one's more important. It is a problem, and it's just not acceptable. So, Obokeng, I hear you. And I hope something can be done about it. But I'm glad you've raised it, because we want to raise it as issues that move the national pulse every single day. We must, as a show, have a finger on the pulse and see how we can in any way facilitate further conversations on that, right? Okay, here's another one that on the national anthem.
Afternoon, Ashraf, this time on Bloomford did. I like the way KB performed that national anthem. I think we should just allow her to sing the national anthem every time when the Springboks are playing. She was not selfish, really. She led the crowd to sing the last part, and it was wonderful. It was emotional. You can feel the energy when the crowd finished that national anthem. They owned the national anthem, and she performed very well.
Well, spot on. She performed very well. Thank you. Right. Maybe the last one I can play just for now, and I'll play further voice notes just now. Here you are.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. You're speaking to Sfiso in Durban. Ashraf, I have a problem, and it's concerning me. Mackenzie was arrested before, and so many leaders, even to ANC, so many leaders, it doesn't matter that they were arrested through politics, but they were arrested. Then what is concerning me is this. A person who's being arrested, doing something wrong, and then he's been in prison or she's been in prison, but now she's looking or he's looking for a job in South Africa. They will never get the job because they will have a record of prison. But the leaders of government, they were in prison. They work for government. They have to correct that, because you arrest a person because you need that person to be corrected. And then they were in prison and then they learned for their mistakes. Why the government never changed the idea? Thank you.
Okay, got that. I think there's a bit of a difference between people who've been arrested for political activism. I mean, that would have been part of the amnesty in the country. Otherwise, they'd be considered as what, criminals, crooks, and I think that's not acceptable because they were fighting a human rights issue. So I get that. Then you get people like Gayton McKenzie. In fact, he was put in prison for 10 years for armed robbery. That's different, right? I mean, he was a crook. That's it, right? The difference is that he's paid his dues and therefore he can be in parliament now and he can be a minister. There is a very big difference in that. That means there has to be space for rehabilitation. If there's no space for rehabilitation, then you wouldn't call it correctional services. It would be something else. It is for correctional purposes, right? To be able to rehabilitate someone in society and bring them back. The broader issue that you mentioned is there are many other people who go through something similar and they have a problem in terms of they never fully rehabilitated because even when they are rehabilitated, they still don't get jobs. Now that I agree with you is a problem. Something has to give.
Here he comes. Hello, guys. You're so dramatic. Hey, bro, it's not me. It's the extra styling kit. The leather seats with the red finish. It's the tow bar, all coming standard with my red Isuzu badge. Wow, now that is extra.
Why be standard when you can get the all-new Isuzu D-Max X Rider from just 8,742 Rand. Prime less 3.5%, 0% deposit, 40% balloon, and 72 months to pay. Get yours today. Finance is subject to approval. Isuzu Finance, a product of Westbank, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized financial services and registered credit provider.
The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference will take place from 10 to 12 July 2024 in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. Tune in to the Full Circle with Bridget Masinga and the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda to get insights from the conference. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Just a reminder, we'll be chatting to Adil in Chabelang, President of Transform SA, around the issues of government plans to secure funding from the National Assembly for a 2,500 megawatt power plant, a nuclear power plant coming up, and there's been DA opposition to that already. So, in fact, did I say DA and government? They should be the same thing, isn't it? They're part of government. We'll talk about that later on, but in the meantime, we know that Mandela Day coming up. I can tell you now, I've had two conversations with people this morning before I even got to the show, and the conversation is all about Mandela Day and Mandela Month, right? So with that in mind, my conversation now with Linda Nkube Nkoma, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, I think is particularly timely. Good day and good chatting to you. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf, and hi to everybody who's tuned on to the show today.
Absolutely, much appreciated from our side. Now, let's talk about what the annual Children's Celebration Fun Walk, which I gather is linked to Mandela Day, but I mean, it is a standalone project in its own right. So what's it about?
Okay, so, during the time that President Mandela was still with us here, in the week leading to his birthday, which is Mandela Day, he used to spend an afternoon with children. And it was because, during the time that was incarcerated, he writes that he missed the voices of children. So he used to carve time out of his busy diary to just spend time with children, enjoying their voices, enjoying their laughter. And so we've continued that tradition. And this year, it has taken the form of a children's walk. We started the walk last year. We're doing it again this year in the form of a children's walk, where children will walk from the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital to the zoo, and then we spend the day having fun with animals at the zoo. So that's what the Children's Celebration is about, and the walk, which is the event to mark it this year.
Okay, that sounds nice, and I mean that's not too far. I mean, you're literally neighbours, aren't you? I'm looking at the Mandela Children's Fund and then the zoo. You guys are neighbours in the Saxonwool area, yeah.
Yeah, the children, I mean, as I shout from my office, they probably could hear me at the zoo. But we're going to walk from the Children's Hospital, which is a little bit further. So we're going to cross over the highway from the Children's Hospital to walk through to the zoo. So it will be just under 5 kilometers.
All right. And when does this take place?
It takes place on Saturday, the 13th of July.
So this coming Saturday, that means, right? Yeah. How important are these annual walks that take place with Nelson Mandela historically and now without him?
Well, I think they're important for us to not lose sight of the fact that children need an opportunity to be children and just laugh and play and have fun in an environment that is safe for them. So that's really, we're kind of creating what South Africa ought to be like for children through platforms like the Children's Celebration and in the form of the walk that we're having this year with the sponsorship of Nedbank.
Okay, and to what degree, maybe just tell us who these children are. You mentioned starting from the hospital, which is like Park Down, right, I gather. But how important, who is this linking the children to the Mandela Project and the Mandela legacy? How much of talk happens around that, or is it just incidental?
Well, it's done by the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, which was set up specifically to look at the issues that affect children. So the children that we're going to be spending the day with on Saturday are children that our community-based organizations who implement the work that we do will have identified, and they will come with them up to the hospital. That's where our walk will start from. And we start from the hospital just to create that linkage between the Children's Fund and the hospital, but to also give some of the children who are at the hospital an opportunity to be part of the hike that goes on before the walk starts.
Indeed.
So it's important that we don't lose sight of the fact that children are the center of the work that the hospital as well as the Children's Fund do. And that's part of the the continuation of
I'm going to ask you to tweet out all the information as well so we can share that and even post it on our Facebook page. But is there a go-to website I can direct people to?
Yeah, it's the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund.co.za and all our socials, NMCF underscore SA. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter.
Okay, got that. Sounds very, very interesting. So if I'm driving in that area and there's a bit of a traffic jam, I will certainly know why. Coming up this weekend, Linda Ngube Nkomo, Chief Executive Officer of the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, this annual walk for children in the name of Nelson Mandela that takes place every single year. Powerful stuff. It is Mandela Day coming up, Mandela Month. By the way, here's a question to you, right? What are you doing? Are you doing anything for Mandela Day, Mandela Month? It could be you, it could be your organization, your family, your school, your business, your institution, whatever it is, your WhatsApp group. Yeah, your WhatsApp group too. What are you doing in the name of Mandela Month for that legacy? I'd like to know. You can tweet it out on our social media pages, but at the same time, feel free as well to also post it on our WhatsApp. Just text message is great, 0614 104 107. Or, in fact, you can also send us a voice note too. Here's another no water story.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Lizzie here from Temba in Hammanskraal. Yes, we do have an issue with water. The trucks that used to deliver some water in our areas, they are no more longer to be seen. I really don't know what is the problem. Can someone from Tamba, Hammanskraal area, come and explain the water, the scarcity of water, please? We really struggle. We're struggling. We have to buy water from the people. Have now made a business of selling water. We have to stop these other trucks, private trucks that are selling water. But now the problem, what if you don't have money to buy clean water? Can somebody please come and explain what is actually happening in regards to water issue? Thank you. Goodbye.
Well, you're right. I think buying clean water, in the supermarkets, it becomes expensive. You can do it once, twice, 3 times. If you're buying 5, it can cost you like 100 rands a time. So before you know it, like 500, 600 rands extra in a week, maybe even more, depending on what you need it for. It's not on, but you remember we spoke about it to Water Can, and they spoke about the city of Tshwane cancelling water tankers. I'll tell you what, I don't know how much Water Can knows about it, but maybe a separate conversation from Water Can is like to do a database conversation around all the problems around water in the country and tell us where are the big hotspots, water spots, lack of water spots all around the country. Here's another big problem.
Hello, Radio South Africa. It is a disgrace to work and not be paid for 3 months, whereas you got employees to get salary. So maybe the new administration, the seventh one, will never tolerate such a comrade sluggishness of administration that is taking place in this country. The money is there in the coffers of SARP, but the person in front of computer can't even pay invoices, 100 of them. I think it's a shame. It shows how sluggish are some of our public servants. So we need consequence management. It's a shame. This has been happening. We hope the mixture of ANC and DA and other parties in the seventh administration will make us live a better life, not this modern slavery life that we've been experiencing for 30 years. I think it's a shame. WP Rams Limpopo.
Well, there you are. Thank you. No water, no money. You can't say no cry because it's a problem. Let's get the news headlines now. News, in fact, with Greg Goes. It's 5 o'clock.
Thanks, Ashraf. The top stories at 5, a chemical factory fire in Durban and concerns over a breakaway group in West Africa. A very good afternoon. Ke Modupi Makhalemele with the news. Paramedics are on the scene of a fire in Queensmead in Durban. A chemical factory is believed to be on fire in the Queensmead industrial area. ALS paramedics spokesperson Gareth Jamieson.
Currently, paramedics are assessing 10 patients who are suffering from difficulty in breathing as a result of the smoke and this heavy haze around the Malvern and surrounding area.
The Public Service Commission has urged the new cabinet to serve ethically and with professionalism. The Commission briefed the media in Pretoria on a variety of public service issues, including the newly formed GNU. Commissioner Anele Koyiya says loyalty and support of the government of today and professionalization of the state are key to building an effective public service.
The following characteristics should resonate with the public service during a new era of an unwavering commitment to uphold the highest standards of professionalism and integrity, with zero tolerance policy towards corruption and malfeasance. Civil servants are reminded of their duty to serve the people with honesty, diligence, and humility. Transparency and accountability must be embedded in the fabric of the government operations.
Road users have been asked to avoid the route between Qwaqwa and Clarence in the Free State due to felt fires in the area. Motorists are urged to use the Qwaqwa and Bethlehem route, or if at Clarence, use Bethlehem to Qwaqwa. Authorities say that a crash has occurred along the Clarence and Qwaqwa road, which will affect traffic there. They are appealing to drivers to be cautious. The Garden Route and Little Karoo have not been spared the adverse weather conditions hitting the Western Cape. Low temperatures, strong winds and a dusting of snow on the mountaintops have been seen in the region. With a level 6 storm surge warning for George, high waves and strong winds pose a significant threat to coastal communities and infrastructure. There have already been reports of wind damage to some residential properties. More rain is on the way and localized flooding is possible. Authorities there are on high alert. The fire chief in George, Niels Barnard.
We are still expecting the worst to come during the late afternoon. And then we just want to urge the residents to stay at home, stay inside, keep yourself warm. And for the informal settlements, please don't make fires inside the informal settlements because that can cause a hazard for us. Stay away from the roads, especially with the excessive wind speeds that's going out, for trees that can fall over.
In Gauteng, some Joburg residents say they're battling to keep themselves warm due to extremely cold temperatures. The Weather Service says that temperatures are expected to plummet overnight to -4 degrees Celsius in Joburg and -2 in Tshwane. However, temperatures are forecast to pick up from tomorrow. This is what some Joburg residents have to say.
I'm actually freezing. I have to use the gas heater to keep myself warm and continuously keep my make hot water bottles.
Hey, it's very, very bad. Actually wearing double socks, double pants, extra hoodies, beanies. I can't stick with this cold at the moment.
And West African leaders at the regional body ECOWAS are grappling with the decision by the military rulers of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger to form their own grouping. The leaders of the three countries, which had earlier this year cut ties with ECOWAS following military coups, met in Niger, while ECOWAS held a meeting in Nigeria. ECOWAS chairperson and Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu says the region is facing many challenges.
We have convened this ordinary session to once again review the situation in our region. We are aware of the enormous challenges, including terrorist activities and violent extremism, threatening to spread from Sahel region towards the coastal states. The decision of the three Sahel countries of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to withdraw from ECOWAS has also been noticed.
The top story at 5 paramedics on the scene of what is believed to be a chemical factory fire in the Queensmead industrial area in Durban. For SAFM News,
in sports, Chiefs explains why they settled for Nabi and Brietzke called up to South Africa Test squad. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
The Gen 3 South remains a heavy backlog today, down to a crash scene at Linksfield Road. The queue extends right back into the Buccleuch interchange territory. That is an especially heavy run-through. Also, collision northbound between Heldenace and Van Buren Road. So coming up past Cement Factory, that is quite slow. And further south, the N3 closed at Heidelberg due to a truck crash and Hazchem spillage in the central Heidelberg area. Traffic is absolutely terrible. It's all being sort of rerouted along the R23 in through central Heidelberg. There's hardly any movement there. Durban having a bit of a traffic nightmare today. All sorts of issues. One is a crash going north before Mgeni Road. Now that's a queue almost back as far as the M7. Coming into that, the N3 from Berea, the N3 from Pavilion Mall, very heavy. Some real problems getting off the N3 and into that N2 crash delay. And then if you're southbound, there's a breakdown in the roadworks before Spaghetti Junction, and that's a big queue that extends right back to Queen Nundy Drive territory. Truck crash recovery approaching Town Hill. If you're into Pietermaritzburg or Durban bound from Howick, off ramp at Hilton to avoid that big backlog between Hilton and Town Hill today. And Cape Town, the R44 Clarence Drive remains closed until further notice. If you're needing to get from Gordons Bay through to Royales, Pringle Betty's or Claymont, it'll be the long way round over Sir Larry's Pass, down through Grabo and Bottrafia, and then a cut back in off the Hermanus Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Let me just remind you, we've been speaking about that national anthem rendition from KB, right? KB. And so we're going to talk to KB. Everybody would call her KB. We're going to talk to her around 10 to 5:45. Listen out for that. Looking forward to that conversation, as well as the 2024 Video Trends Report, which if you're into innovation, and the world is about innovation and a massive move towards the digital spaces for your business as well as for your recreation, then you absolutely must hear that. Question is, power, as in nuclear power or electricity or coal, recreation, or is it something an absolute must-have? I think it's a must-have. We all know that. So let's talk about that first up as we get into the next hour of the show. But as always, you know that you can comment on any of the range of issues we've been speaking about, basically what it is for you that drives or moves the National Pulse today. 0614 104 107 to call in 086 000 2032. Here's an interesting one from, I think it's Bai, writing, Ashraf, I'm not going to do anything about Mandela Day. Mandela was not the only one who fought for freedom. I mean, I hear you, but remember, he's a symbol. That's why he was the first president of the country. That's the point, right? He is the first president of this country, and therefore has a special symbol around what he did and what he stood for. And I mean, he would be the first one to say, it's not me, it's what I stand for. But anyway, what do you stand for regarding electricity and nuclear power. So we know this earlier, the Electricity and Energy Minister Ramakgopa said, well, he's got this nuclear plan that needs approval from the National Treasury by next month for about a 2,500 megawatt power plant. But it's hit a bit of an obstacle. There's been opposition from the DA. And it's interesting because it's one of the first plays of, government of national unity and parties within the same government having different views about it. It's a lot more serious than, who talks first and who talks second. So we thought, let's understand what are the issues really. And where do we go with regard to it, right? Crown Prince Adil Nchamalang is with me. He's the president of Transform SA. He's also an independent energy expert. Adil, good chatting to you as always. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Absolutely right. First of all, help us understand there's the need for a nuclear energy plant, 2,500 megawatts, understand. Is there a need for that?
Absolutely. There's currently a huge need for a power plant for us to substitute the current crisis we're sitting with in respect to our energy shortage. Remember, load shedding has ended on the backbone of really refurbishing and repairing the current power stations. Your Medupi or Kusile has brought in a little bit of capacity in terms of brand new capacity, 2,600 megawatts or 800 megawatts each. But it's not sufficient into the future demand. Remember, South Africa has reduced in its capacity to generate electricity, and we have not substituted that amount. So a 2,600 is just the minimum required to literally make sure that when we take other power stations offline and we are going to be decommissioning them, you have something to fall back on. And in this case, right now, we don't have anything, and that is why you need to increase the current nuclear. Nuclear in South Africa under Kusile is giving us 2,000 megawatts as we speak. And they're going to be taking it offline to repair one of its units, which means 1,000 will be out. So if you don't have more nuclear energy capacity added onto the grid, which actually helps us in terms of reducing emissions, it gives us clean energy, we achieve the global emissions targets, we already tick off some of the critical things. But the thinking in South Africa is constantly delayed. When we speak nuclear, people use the nuclear option to literally demonize it unnecessarily, whereas nuclear is the best energy around the world. France, they have nothing else but nuclear, and they're running on a nuclear energy capacity to power the entire of France, including neighboring countries like Germany, etc., so including the UK. But when we talk about nuclear in South Africa, there's always a scarecrow, People do not trust black people, particularly, with a nuclear capacity.
Why is there a demonizing? I mean, what's your understanding?
Look, I think the demonization is the fact that it's an African country going into a nuclear space. When it was apartheid under the white government, they didn't have a problem. They gave them the nuclear in terms of the Pelindaba for the research purposes. They gave them, and Pelindaba was worse because it was doing high nuclear enrichment, which was arms grade nuclear for, nuclear bombs, etc., for research purposes. But in our case in South Africa, the nuclear we're using now, it's low grade. It's got nothing to do with, enrichment. It's purely for experimental technology for your medical and stuff in Pelindaba. In Quebec, it's purely for energy generation. So it just produces electricity. There's anything else other than that. So the scarecrow is nuclear gives you sovereignty and capacity, because with a nuclear plant, you need to have a military capable to protect your nuclear assets in the country. So the fear is, why do you want to give an African country a nuclear capability under black leaders? And that's my view. I mean,
but do you think it's as simple as that? Because I understand what you're saying, and that's an ideological issue. But I understand. Let's take the DA specifically, and the DA now is part of the government of national unity, so very different, right? So they, I understand, will be challenging, NERSA's decision more around the issues of procedure, irregularity, and irrationality, as opposed to maybe what you alluded to.
Look, the DA is playing games. DA has no support for nuclear. They are just playing to the gallery. Because this nuclear power build has been started before the coming into the government of national unity, they are now saying we've got a court case that we've already started prior, which is a couple of months ago, in order to oppose the MRE as well as the NERSA from proceeding with the procurement of a 2,500 megawatts of nuclear. Yes, they are using procedure, they are using things like irregularity, which we all know it's actually a scapegoat, it's like a scarecrow. But the real reason of it is, I don't think they trust the current government with nuclear. And not only that, they don't have the control as to who will be the nuclear partners that comes on board. I mean, the current spat between, the DA minister, Kevin Milleham, who's the deputy minister, against the, the announcement by Minister of Electricity, Hosientu Ramokgopa, is based on that particular issue to say, these guys do not want the current 2,500 megawatts procurement plan to proceed, and they are using these irregularity issues. But in essence, we know that nuclear is safe. I mean, over the last 20, 30 years, there's never been a nuclear accident in the world. Even Fukushima was not a nuclear accident. It was an earthquake that ended up affecting a nuclear plant. That plant was contained, and the plant is operational today as we speak, and has not, so the fundamentals of it is everybody else creates a scarecrow. And what surprises me is people in the green movement who are saying we want to reduce emissions, we want to create green energy, we want to make sure that the carbon intensity is reduced and carbon dioxide is removed from the environment, should be supporting nuclear, but they are antagonistic in their nature towards nuclear.
All right. So the broader issue, I mean, besides, the scarecrow effect that you've spoken about, the broader issue, and you just touched on it, people in the green space, would be towards greener, cleaner energy as opposed to traditional coal. Now, the flip side of that and this just transition that we often talk about is I think many of the European countries feeling the impact and the fallout from what's happened between Russia and the Ukraine have gone back to traditional coal to stay alive, so to speak, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw it with the current scenario whereby, between Russia and Ukraine, when Ukraine's power plants were taken over by Russia, which is nuclear power plants, there was no nuclear accident. There was no nuclear, conflict around it. There were not bombings of a nuclear power plant that exploded. So, the nuclear industry has unfortunately done its own disjustice. They never spend time on public education. They never spend time on developing, a legislative buy-in. They always considered it a science that should be kept in secret and wrapped up in scarecrow ideas of environmental, degradation issues, environmental crisis where if there's a nuclear leak and all of those things. But over the years, nuclear has been the most safest power plant in the world. So in the case of what they are proposing, we're looking at small modular nuclear reactors, which are based on light water reactors and can be placed anywhere in the country and can be highly safe and be operated. So the current FARs made by DA does not make any sense. Procedure, yes, is one thing. We can agree to that. But if there is an open bid, request for information, to say, propose to us what you think is possible, isn't that procedural? Nobody has been appointed already. There's no procurement of nuclear power plant from any country in the world. And by the way, there's only 3 or 4 countries that can do this power plant effectively and correctly.
Okay,
and most of them have not even yet bid it.
So you would support the Minister of Electricity and Energy's move to gain the funds from Treasury to be able to fund this nuclear plant, right? You'd support it, I gather.
I would support it, and not only that, the current bidding should ask the question to say, is this bids, do they come with a guarantee of funding on their own? Nuclear bids can be funded independently from Treasury's coffers. So Treasury does not have to pay except when they generate electricity and share the tariff with whoever the bidder is at the time, like they're doing with IPPs. They can have a nuclear IPP, the country of origin between South Africa, because you cannot do nuclear on IPPs where there's independent owners, but you can do a country-to-country bid, where South Africa, for instance, say with France, they have a joint bid to say we will build these nuclear reactors on the basis that that money only gets paid in when the nuclear reactors are operational and are producing electricity, and out of it they charge a tariff that is shared in terms of the debt against the profit that is given to the country that is enjoying the value of the electricity. That's one model, for instance, to say. So Treasury does not have to currently panic now to set out money aside to pay for this so-called expensive procurement. There is no expensive procurement right now. Okay, and some of the things that they are peddling is misleading information.
All right. Just before we wrap up then, Adil, what's your thoughts on what I'd call the 100-day plus no load shedding honeymoon we experiencing. What's your understanding of it all, and how sustainable may it be as we get into the deep, bitter, icy winter right now?
Look, it's incredible news for the fact that we've proven our point right when we said that South Africa can be load shedding free. I've been one of the vocal activists on it to say it will take 3 to 6 months for Eskom to get its act together if they went back and really sort of sorted out the issues at power plants. They've currently reduced a lot of their breakdowns from 18,000 to 16,000. Now they are sitting at around 12,000 megawatts. And on top of it, they've reduced their diesel consumption, and they have increased the availability of electricity in terms of energy generation. Power plants that are coming now into operation, and they are feeding into the grid, and they've been stabilized in terms of, things like, tube leaks, breakdowns and everything have been reduced to their most minimum levels. So Eskom is now back to its life of performance. So it's a great honeymoon. For the last 5-7 years, we've been living in a most disaster scenario where last year alone there were 335 days of load shedding, the most despicable, operational, inefficiencies we've ever seen. Now that you've got a good board, you've got a good ministries, between the Minister of Electricity and Energy, they've been working together. Between DPE in terms of the previous the Department of Public Enterprise, they worked together to stabilize. On top of it, Treasury came in to support the turnaround of Eskom by capital injection, bringing in money to boost the level of investment in terms of infrastructure, refurbishment, maintenance, repairs, etc. So it's incredible, and we want to see this happen, not just 100 days. It has to go over the next 100 days. It gives us 2 quarters in a year. By the 100 days, it's already 300 days, which means
that's where
we've been almost a whole year load shedding free, which is an incredible thing.
I'm looking for 1,000 days, Ariel in Chabalang. Let's hope we get to 1,000 days, because
Let's put the target out.
I'm always for a government of national service delivery. That's what I really want.
For years, Outsurance have been saying they will save you money on your car insurance or give you cash if they don't. Here are real clients who put it to the test.
Hi, my name is Deboho. I'm 36 from Benoni, and I pay 762 Rand for my Ford Figo 2018 model with Outsurance Comprehensive.
So here's how it works. SMS out to 30754. We'll give you a no-obligation car insurance quote. If the quote is less than you're currently paying, you'll end up saving money on your car insurance every month. And if it's more than you're currently paying, you can ask for 500 Rand. And if you've been with the same insurer and claim free for 3 years or more, and we can't beat your premium, tell us you want 1,500 Rand.
As the slogan goes, you always get something out, either your savings or the 500 Rand.
Pay less every month or get cash. You just can't lose. Go to outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Yeah, we can do this. It's been a long time coming. This deserves to grow. It's a great business. If they don't like it, someone else will. And fund me so I can expand. Maybe I can offer them shares. I need to retain equity for staff. It's going to be good for recruitment. Yeah.
Possible begins with that one great idea. When Telkom enables entrepreneurs to make their ingenuity a reality, we grow local economies. Telkom. Possible begins here.
The youth is the future of South Africa. We envision a society where young people can thrive without fear of violence and abuse. Gender-based violence, the murder of female students by their partners, revenge porn, and other forms of cyber violence has become a pervasive and devastating reality for young people. We cannot be silent. It's time to amplify youth voices towards a culture shift. The GBVF Response Fund calls for unity in building a future where young lives are not tainted by violence and fear. This is an SABC-supported initiative.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Okay, let's talk about video trends. What do they really mean? So it's part of, us focusing on innovation that we do every day around this time. With me is Hanfred Rausch, who's the head of storytelling at Reddish Blue. Reddish Blue as in red, okay? Reddish Blue. Hanfred, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. Nice to be online. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Right. I understand you've got this 2024 video trends report, and I'm certainly very interested in the use of video in terms of, content creation. So what have you come up with?
Well, it occurred to me while I was in a client workshop one day at the beginning of this year that there's huge value in, being able to peek over the fence as a business and to see what your neighbors are doing. But in South Africa, we don't really have a lot of access to up-to-the-minute trend reporting and that kind of thing. We have a lot of access to American and European trends, but not really South African. And I felt that as a new media in-house agency, a video agency, we have access to a huge variety of clients, from the food space to the lifestyle space and even financial and medical. And it was a chance for us to share some of our insights with anyone who's interested.
Mm-hmm. So what did you come up with?
We came up with a lot of insights around the idea of self-generated content. So the idea of an employee, for instance, in a hard-to-reach environment, say a company's got 35 branches countrywide, they could be creating content over there, and then we could put that together for them in a professional way. So it's the kind of thing where a company without video training could be doing their own content. Shooting with purpose was another thing. It saves you a lot of money and time when you know what you're doing going into it. There's also thrifting, which is hugely valuable to companies. So using stock footage, for instance, to elevate the overall production value of content. Storytelling is hugely important. It's what sets brands apart from each other, the story that you're telling. And then, of course, horizontal and vertical shooting, deciding not to just crop a video, but to shoot with your aspect ratio in mind. These are all things that challenges that our clients face that we solve on a daily basis.
And if I understand what you mean, is these are now clients doing it very much sort of in-house, business to business, right? Then there's the broader issue around videos, which is, the general market that the vast majority, I think, listening to the show right now would be indulging in. And some of them, it's very hit or miss. They don't really know whether they should use video. They don't know how to do it. And if they're doing it, they're not too sure whether it works or not.
Yeah. Well, we provide storytelling as a service. New media has been around for about 25 years. And last year, they started an in-house video agency. And our whole purpose is to find the story first and to make the video second. So we help them build that strategy because it's true what you're saying. People have been told for the last 10 years that video is king, but what is video meant to do? And we help them with that.
So what is video meant to do? I mean, how powerful is video if, as you're suggesting, that video is king?
On a practical level, Ashraf, if you consider that 90% of viewers choose whether or not to buy a product or service based on a video they saw, that makes it's a hugely insightful piece of information that came out in this trend report that we published. 75% of people watch video content on their mobiles, for instance. So that obviously determines whether you shoot something for vertical or horizontal. But in general, the story is what's important to us and how that relates to you as a business. And I think a lot of businesses forget that the story is not about them and when they were founded and that kind of thing, but it's their client. And I think what video does is to put the client front and center. We sometimes laugh at the idea of somebody, doing an unboxing video or something like that. But as simple as that seems, it does put the viewer in the shoes of somebody who's just received this product, and it shows them how it works. And that's hugely valuable. I think it obviously ties, you need a sort of a bigger strategy in the long run, but it's a great place to start is to show people what you do and how it benefits them. It's that show, don't tell mentality.
Lots to consider there. Is there a website we can direct people to find out more about it? I'm certainly interested in this report.
Yes, absolutely. Our website is reddishblue.co.za, but we are part of New Media, which is newmedia.co.za.
Right. Feel free to tweet out the links as well if you can, okay? Just tag SAFM Radio and tag myself, Ashraf Garda. Would be very keen to share that, and definitely want to have a closer look at what is called now, remember the Internet of Things? Well, replace that with the video of things. Hanford Rausch, Head of Storytelling at Reddish Blue. You got that? Let's get the news headlines now with Madupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines this hour, a veld fire that ripped through a rural area between Klokweng and Ngangahu in the Eastern Cape has razed more than 10 households at Mahombe village. Paramedics on the scene of what is believed to be a chemical factory fire in the Queensmead industrial area in Durban. And US President Joe Biden continues to face choppy political waters amid calls from some parts of the Democratic Party that he terminate his campaign and step aside. I'll be back with a full news update at 6.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It stays heavy on Joburg's N3 South today on the run between Buccleuch and Edenvale. It's a crash that's been there for quite some time, just before the Linksfield Road exit, and it's a really heavy backlog of traffic from that N1 Buccleuch. There's also a bit of onlooking on the northbound side as well as you come up from Giluli's and make your way through towards Modderfontein Road, and quite a queue as well on the Marlborough Drive approach. If you're leaving Sandton, you want to on-ramp to the N3, you're going to wait through that sort of Marlborough Gardens area to get into the N3. That's how heavy it is. Sandton Drive at William Mandela, a crash there from earlier today, still causing delays leaving Sandton, and a breakdown on the N1 South before you get to Bayers Nordia. So from Sunninghill, that's quite heavy down through four ways in the Randburg area. Truck crash recovery underway approaching Pietermaritzburg. The road closed between Hilton and Peter Brown Drive. Come off at Hilton would be the advice, or come off at Sadara to avoid the congestion on the Hilton off-ramp. Work down that alternative local route. Durban, bit of a nightmare scenario around Spaghetti Junction. Best plan of attack would be to avoid travel through Spaghetti. There's a crash going northbound before Mgeta Road. That traffic's all the way back through 4 Level and right back to the M7 Bluff exit. Into that, the N3 queues from Paradise Valley Pavilion. Outbound queues from Berea, so very heavy, just trying to get off the N3 and turn into that enormous traffic going northbound. Also, the N2 South from Queen Nandi Drive in towards 4 Levels, quite slow after an earlier breakdown. Cape Town today, some traffic light outages. Delaray and Robert Sobukwe, 35th and Robert Sobukwe. That whole Moderdam area is heavily backed up just to the north of the airport, and Clarence Drive remaining closed until further notice. If you need to get from Gordons Bay around to Claymont or towns east of Royales, you'll have to go to Larry's Pass, Crabo and Bottrafia. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgapele.
So the big talk as we get into sport with Tumi is about the Amakhosi.
Yeah. Kaizer Chiefs are set to host Tanzania's reigning champions, Young Africans, in the inaugural annual Toyota Cup later this month. The groundbreaking preseason cup, as Amakhosi described it, will see the club face off against some of Africa's top football clubs during the off-season for the next 3 years, as an extension to Chiefs' current sponsorship agreement with Toyota South Africa. Bloemfontein will host the first ever edition on the 28th of July at the Toyota Stadium. And here's Kaizer Chiefs Marketing Director Jessica Madaung explaining why they chose Bloemfontein, to be exact.
Well, Bloemfontein is a home away from home, for us. It is a place where we have such a huge support base. And also, Bloemfontein hasn't had a lot of football, and we were pleased to see the Bafana game doing so well. And we're just excited to bring football back to Bloem, also celebrating the heritage in Tata Malemela and Celtic and what they've represented in South African football, is to say thank you to them, and how can we keep growing football in Bloemfontein and make sure that we give the game back to our people.
Well, Mutaung has also explained why the club opted for Nasruddin Nabi as their new head coach. The Tunisian mentor was unveiled by the club yesterday after joining the squad during the pre-season camp in Turkey.
I believe that we've done all the work to make sure that we have the right team, the right coach, to make sure that we take Chiefs to the next level. And we're looking forward to his work and the work of the team that he's assembled, and also the young players and older players who are going to be part of the squad.
Why him?
Why him? Well, I think we've looked at a number of things here. We've looked at the right coach who's coached on the continent, who understands the Chiefs brand, who understands we want to go, a coach who's got hunger and passion for success, and passion for the Chiefs brand, and a whole lot more. I mean, I must say, well done to the sporting director and the entire footballing department, together with the football manager, for the extensive work they did in scouring the world. It was just not a continental decision. We looked at a number of coaches and the presentations that were made and the thorough analysis and finding the right team of people to work with us. I must congratulate them on that work, and I am excited that we'll give them all the support as a board, as an organization, and also as the fans, to make sure that Chiefs goes to where it needs to be from a success point of view.
Still staying with football, African football icon Samuel Eto'o has been cleared of charges related to alleged match fixing and breaches of ethical principles by the Confederation of African Football, although he's been fined $200,000 in the process. The 43-year-old made headlines for the wrong reasons over 10 months ago, when accusations of match manipulation and ethical breaches were brought against him by players in Cameroon. However, he avoided a lifetime ban from football after a thorough examination of the evidence led by the CAF disciplinary board that concluded that there was no sufficient proof to charge him. In cricket, batsman Matthew Breetzke has received his first call-up to South Africa's Test squad for the 2-match series in the West Indies next month. The 25-year-old captained South Africa A in a 4-day match against India A in December, and has been included on the back of his good domestic form, where he had an average of 46 in the last season's domestic 4-day competition, including a top score of 188. Meanwhile, with only 51 days to go to the Paris Olympic Games, the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee announced an initial squad of 26 to represent South Africa. Many still have the opportunity to qualify for the Paralympics, including para-athletics, para-judo, para-triathlon and wheelchair tennis, which means that more names will be added to the team that departs in August. And now, for the first time, there's incentives.
Well, the incentives are the same with the Olympians. So we have shown equality across the spectrum, where we're going to recognize the athletes as well as the coaches. But in the case of the para-athletes, even their guides this time around will also be incentivized. So the following will be received. For gold, 400,000 rand for the athletes, 100,000 rand for the coach. Silver, 200,000 rand for the athlete, 50,000 for the coach. And bronze, 75,000 for the athlete and 25,000 for the coach. And that's it. We also have provided incentives for boccia as well as for the guides as well across the 3 tiers as well.
That's it. It is a wrap from my side. I'll have more on other sports tomorrow morning.
So I'm just thinking there's so much to talk about. What do you want to pick up on the Chiefs appointment?
Interesting appointment. I think I was already intrigued by the technical team arriving first and how they've decided in letting go certain players. Some of them I didn't see them going. However, you can see that they're very determined going into the new season. Just looking at this Toyota Cup, very interesting that they'll be facing other African clubs also, just to show that there's a relationship between the leagues in the continent as a whole.
Which is a good thing.
Absolutely great, because usually we tend to see these clubs in the PSL going to Europe. But now at least they're saying, let's try and find the best in the continent and let's go up against them. And perhaps they're also eyeing to also compete in the Champions League.
Well, they
in the
have
future.
to. I think here's a big question. How much time does he have?
That's a big question.
That's what Nabi.
We'll just have to wait and see.
Can't wait and see.
I
What
mean,
is that
with fans,
Toyota punchline?
listen,
Everything keeps going right. Have I got that right?
With Kaizer Chiefs fans, they want it now.
But that's why my question. How much time does he have? Like, how much? Okay, we'll see. Everything doesn't keep going right to pick up that Toyota theme. Thanks for that, Tumi. We'll chat tomorrow, but you've got your sign-off tomorrow.
Alrighty. I am Tumi Nkapele. Mudimukyo.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, it's a Monday. What is we know what sporting people do on a Monday after the weekend. What do business people do on a Monday after a long weekend? Long weekend, either way, it's the same old thing. Jimmy Muyaha with the MoneyWeb Market Update. What have you got?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to me, and good afternoon to the listeners. Business people, take a look at what moves the markets and the decisions that happen over the weekend and how they affect the markets. I must admit, though, this past weekend was largely spent celebrating the Springboks victory more than anything else. But we're back at it. We're back looking at the markets and what moves them. And today we're looking at the latest decision by the Department of Trade, Industry and corporations around the exemption they've provided for hospitals or smaller private hospitals within the national network. They are putting through an exemption that's aimed at helping these smaller businesses better improve their competitiveness, especially when compared to the larger private hospitals. We've got a conversation with the head of comms at the Competition Commission around that. Then we've got a conversation around the amount of crypto that was stolen in the last year up to the end of June. I think it's just north of 25 billion rand, according to a report put together by a research company. So we're going to be looking at that and try and understand why cryptos are the target of so much theft. This is in particular reference to theft via way of hacking. So we know that cybercrime is not cybercrime does not discriminate against which industry it takes money from, but we're going to be looking at cryptos in particular here. And then we've got a conversation with Keith Peter from Old Mutual around understanding your financial anxiety and your financial stress and how to deal with all of that when making your investment decisions. And then finally, because Monday is our personal finance segment, we're taking a look at the actual costs of funerals. I know for many people out there, you think you have it covered. We all think that the funeral policies you have in place would be sufficient when the time comes to sort of use those policies to say goodbye to some loved ones. But more often than not, and what the industry suggests is that there is a level of underinsurance because a lot of unexpected costs come up. So we're going to be looking at that in detail and looking at how to best prepare yourself for that, what questions to ask and what conversations to have with your financial advisor or with your funeral provider. But before we get to that, we're taking a look at the markets because they had a rather interesting day. In some spaces, markets were fairly quiet, but in other spaces, they were moving quite a bit. On the Rand side, we're back closer to that 18 Rand level. And I'm joined on the line by Henko Creer, who's been keeping an eye on the markets throughout the day for us. He's going to give us a quick summary of what's been happening. Good evening, Henko. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on those markets. It seems as though there is a bit of calm at the moment to start off the new week. Nothing seems to be moving too much. But nonetheless, the Rand is on good ground.
Yes, Jimmy, I agree with you. It was a relatively quiet Monday afternoon on the markets, especially on the stock exchange, the JSE's all-share index, which did not move at all today. Maybe local markets a bit frozen today in this cold that we experience. And a good evening to you, Jimmy, and to Ashraf and to me, and of course, to all of our listeners. Yes, so the JSE finished unchanged today. Didn't move up or down, and it closed at 80,784 points. The industrial index also did not move and finished unchanged, but the financial index gained 0.6% today, and the resources index finished 1.1% weaker. If we look at some of the companies that gave strong performances today, we find Telkom, which finished 3% up. Equities and Remgro, they each finished 2.5% stronger, followed by Quilter, Mass and Sappi, which each gained 1.7% today, and Nedbank and Investec, they each finished 1.4% stronger. On the negative side, Alphamin and Italtal lost 4% today, and Implats and South32 finished today 3% weaker. You also find Goldfields and ARM, as well as the MTN Group, which each lost 2%, and Vodacom finished today 1.8% down. If we quickly have a look at the 10 largest companies on the JSE, First Rand and Naspers each gained 1.2%, and Standard Bank finished the day 1% stronger, but Glencore and Anglo each lost 1.2% today. Richmond finished 1.7% down, and BHP lost 2.1%. If we have a look at the exchange rate, at the moment, 18 Rand and 9 cents to the US dollar, 19 Rand 59 to the euro, 12 Rand 20 to the Australian dollar, and 23 Rand 20 cents to the pound. On the commodities market, the price of gold is $2,373 an ounce, silver is trading at $31, platinum $1,003 an ounce, and palladium trading at $1,017. The oil price is $86.20 a barrel. The price of a Bitcoin is $56,300, but that's still R1,050,000. And Jimmy, if I can finish off by quickly having a look at what's going on in the US. There at the moment, the Dow Jones is trading 0.1% down, the S&P 500 0.1% up, the Nasdaq 0.3% stronger, and European stocks, they finished mixed a short while ago. The CAC 40 lost 0.5% today, the DAX gained 0.1%, and the FTSE 100 finished the day 0.1% weaker. And Jimmy, that's how the markets performed.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. We'll be back a little later on to take a look at these market movements and try and unpack what's going to be driving this week. There's a lot of data coming out of the US later in the week, and we're going to be looking at that as well to try and see how that could potentially move markets and that big interest rate conversation. But we'll be back just after 6. For now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Jimmy, listen, I know you like sport. What is your thoughts of the national anthem, the rendition by KB on Saturday?
Absolutely well done.
Okay, good.
Absolutely well done.
Tell you what, you have another take on that. You can listen to that rendition again just now, and we will chat to her about it. So you have every reason to be distracted from something less important called money and listen to some sport just now.
Chomi, I just hope I get auto-assessed this year so I can just accept.
You're so lazy. Remember, not everyone gets the auto-assessment notice.
I know, but I'm ready. I've got my e-filing password sorted, I've updated my details, and my IRP5 is ready.
Make tax matters priority by updating your personal and banking details and expect your auto-assessment notice from 1 to 14 July. If you disagree with your auto-assessment, file your return via e-filing. If you don't receive a notice, visit e-filing to submit your tax return from 15 July 2024. Visit sars.gov.za for more information. Your tax matters. SARS, at your service.
Nelson Mandela once said,
"It is in your head to create a better world for all who live in it."
SAFM urges you to identify those in need around you and to do what you can to make a difference to them. Tata Mandela went further to say, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lived. SAFM celebrates Mandela Month. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
So looking forward to that conversation about that rendition of the national anthem coming up shortly. Further comments, and we've had many comments about a range of issues. Definitely a lot on the nuclear issue. Here's one.
Hi. Just to support the guy with this nuclear image, is Takane. Why Quebec is not a problem? Quebec and Cape Town.
Why is it not a problem? It's a question. Okay, here's another, right?
Afternoon, Ashraf. It's making Durban. Hey, Ashraf, politics. Many years ago, this whole thing of nuclear, it was obvious we needed nuclear energy. But people were up in arms. Nuclear, no nuclear, lying to us. I mean, those of us who were in the know, we knew that we need nuclear. And boom, now we need nuclear. As if it's a new thing. It's always been known we needed nuclear. And we allowed people like Pravin Gordhan to dictate to us, tell us, no, we can't afford nuclear, as if we can afford load shedding.
Okay, that's another, as if we can, well, certainly we can't afford load shedding, we know that. Here's another one that I think the Zuma factor is interesting.
Hi, Ashraf. Hi, SAFM listeners. Please ask the minister, the nuclear he's suggesting now, how is that different from the nuclear power Jacob Zuma suggested when he was still president, because it seems as if there's a little bit of hypocrisy. We couldn't afford it during Jacob Zuma. Can we afford it now? Thank you, Deji, Cape Town.
Thank you. Of course, I mean, we need to get a chance to speak to the minister. What we were talking to earlier was Adil in Chabalang, who's from Transform SA, but he's also an energy expert. But we'll get to the minister soon enough, right? We've been talking often about a database of places in the country without water. Here's another.
Afternoon, Ashraf, is Hamilton. Ashraf, I come from a small village in Limpopo. It's called Makasa village. It's under Konis Chavani municipality. It's also known as Kamabundani. This village has been without water for more than I can remember. Should you ask a 25-year-old man or woman, they will tell you that they've never seen water on their taps. And it is true. They've never seen water coming out of their taps, because there's been no water in the area for more than I can remember, or for more than 25 years. And municipalities changed. It was Malamulele back in the days. It changed. We were combined with Toyando and become Chulamela. Then now back to Kolis Chavani. None of these municipalities tried to solve the water. In fact, they didn't even try. They don't care. We still don't have water even to date.
I'll tell you what, this water problem is severe. So can I just repeat myself, because it's important? We want to use this platform, the National Pulse, to transform society in our own small way. We're not politicians, we're not in charge, but we just want to amplify. So wherever you may be in the country, last week was the city of Joburg, you could well be in Pretoria, you could well be out in Port Shepstone, you could be somewhere in Velcom, wherever you are. If you have a water problem extending beyond one day and it continues, let us know. And then what we're going to try and do is get the local councillor or the authority around water to talk about that and give us some answers. We must get to the bottom of water. We absolutely have to do that. Right, we're going to talk to KB. You know KB? You know the national anthem? We'll talk about that next.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Kelly, what I certainly love my sport, and I love, but sometimes even if the sport is lousy, I can watch and listen to all the national anthems of all the countries in the world. I've been doing that with the Euro 2024, absolutely. But our own is our own national anthem, and it always gives me a thrill, I can tell you now. And that was exactly the case when the Springboks played against the Irish on Saturday at Loftus, right? So with me is KB, as we all know her, Kiabetswe, KB Motsilanyane, who's a actress, she's a musician, but certainly now we know for sure she can deliver a powerful national anthem. KB, great chatting to you. And you know, we want to focus on big winners and big champions in this space, and you're certainly one of them.
Oh, good evening. Good evening. How are you?
I'm very good indeed, yeah. So, have you replayed your singing of the anthem? Or like, is it a case of, you know, when you're done with work, you don't want to even hear yourself again, you just walk away?
Oh, wow. This I usually do that, but this time I wasn't able to pleasantly so, because I keep getting, videos and feedback and messages just commenting on the performance.
Okay, but so you haven't watched the videos, you haven't really heard yourself, no. You just reposted, that's all you did.
I have watched.
Well, I tell you what. For those, you could have a chance to listen again, and for those who are listening for the first time, wondering what all the fuss is about, because I opened the show today with my "That's My Point" feature, talking about the power of the unifying power of a national anthem. In this case, the national anthem. KB, here it is once again. I never want to get tired of listening to our national anthem. I really don't.
It was very well written. It's really a beautiful anthem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's it like for you to perform? I mean, that's what you do. But I mean, perform in a studio is not the same as performing in front of 50,000 people with a global audience, and it is a global audience. What's it like to perform?
Oh, it is so nerve-wracking, to be honest. It's such a huge responsibility. You're constantly reminding yourself of every important thing that you are supposed to do, what you're supposed to achieve, and playing the anthem over and over in my head, to say, just you need to be on point, because you're not performing for yourself, you're performing you're actually leading the nation in the anthem, and the song is not yours alone, it belongs to the nation, so you have to give it the due respect, you have to give it dignity, and just give it your best.
So how then do you prepare for a perfect performance, keeping in mind that even the sport that you're at, the rugby, there is no perfect performance. So, there's a plan that they have, and there's opposition who are trying to thwart that plan. And you are trying to deliver a perfect performance.
Right. So many years ago, I happened to be at an event with the then CEO of Proudly South African, and we were talking about the national anthem, and I said to him, how does one perform the national anthem? What is the correct way of performing the national anthem? And he said to me, just sing it from the heart. Just sing it from the heart. And I take that with me every single time. I listen to it and I sing it like it's my first time singing it. I listen to every single word that I'm saying, and I relate it to what I'm feeling in that moment.
And when you do that, I mean, I'm thinking that must have been Leslie Sidibe, because he always made a fuss when I've emceed Proudly SA events. Absolutely right. But when you say it, I mean, how important is it that the crowd doesn't just stand to attention, but engages in the singing as well?
Yes, it's very important, and I think what happens is that's what I'm saying, it's more like you are leading the anthem. So you stand there and you're supposed to set the tone and say, this is what we are doing now. And so by engaging, making eye contact and looking at everyone, and the body language saying, come, let us do this together. So instead of just watching me, I would love for us to do this together, because that's what the moment needs. That is what we all need. It is nerve-wracking because you don't know if the audience will engage, if they will go with you. But I was really, really blessed that this weekend that is exactly what happened, without missing a beat.
Yeah. And then you made a call, I mean, which, you may not do the same call for 10 other renditions, right? Which is when you came to the last but the English stanza, then you decided to sort of drop your own voice and just got them to sing. And, if they could all keep shut, and then you have a problem, isn't it? You have to pick it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there was so much anticipation and spontaneity in that. That's why I understood that I need to really connect with the crowd from the beginning. So the entire time when I was on the pitch waiting for the anthem, I was making eye contact and I was keeping my body language open to say, I'm open to receive from you, and I'm open to also share this experience with you. I hope that's what made it. That's what built towards that moment.
Now, of course, I mean, you've got a stellar career. You're very, very well known already. But suddenly, you're well known, like in global rugby circles. What sort of feedback are you getting? I mean, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yes, because I saw the video and I was watching it, and then I noticed at the top there's a watermark that says Sky News, and I said, what is this? It's been so overwhelming. I still shake when I think about it right now, because the feedback, I'm getting messages from people, South Africans overseas, saying thank you so much, just heartfelt, positive messages, and I'm so honored, I'm so humbled, I'm so grateful, because that was the Springboks platform.
Yeah,
the number one rugby team in the world. So to know that my presence there added to the moment. I'm really, really grateful and honored, because that is, if anything, what I would like to achieve, to really show up in the correct way and embrace, the occasion.
Absolutely.
Without taking away from what it's supposed to be. So I'm truly grateful to the Springboks for allowing me to do this.
Well, there you are. Well, we need to wrap up, unfortunately. But I mean, we love the fact that we love to identify champions in this space. I mean, you're absolutely that. And this is a clear rendition of, country duty. So just the last thing in like 20 seconds, right? The response has been like, it wasn't just you delivered a great one. They're like, you were incredible, right? When you just got that first response from Sky, and you realize, like, what have I done? What did you think?
Yes.
You got a quick one line to answer that. What did you think?
Yes. I still don't have the answer, and I kept thinking, I kept asking, but what did I do? But I've appreciated that. I got to understand that the timing of everything, the culmination of all the events leading up, just in our country, as well as building up to the match itself, to the anthem just before the match.
Absolutely.
I think that's what it was, and how everybody just was looking forward to.
Bottom line, South Africa is alive with possibilities, as it always has been. It's been great chatting to you, really, and I look forward to further success for you and further deliveries of the national anthem when we win every single big World Cup in every sporting event in the world, okay? I'm being positive.
Thank you so
KB,
much.
much appreciate your time. There we are. That's the type of thing we need to talk about. There are some magic people and magic things happening in our country. This is just one of them. That's the show. Great to connect with the entire team that put it all together. Phineas, Tumi, Tebogo, Keys, Vusani, as well as Chemba, and you as well. Feel free to connect. Tell me what you think about the national anthem. You probably have to do a social media post so I can pick it up. Still to come, we have Top Sport with Michael Abramson. We got The Viewpoint coming up with Ngaba, and then Night Talk with Oliver Dixon. Everything to keep you occupied. First things first, it's business and the markets with Jimmy Moyaha, but we start with the news at 6 with Mudupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda. Safe travels. The top stories this hour: houses destroyed by felt fires in the Eastern Cape, and Biden under more pressure to step aside. A very good evening.